or a budget hearing for May 31st, 2022 at 6 p.m. In attendance is Councilor McGivern, Councilor Murphy Brambaletti, Councilor Tallman, Councilor Maldonado Velez, Councilor Vacan, Councilor Jordan, and myself. There are a few people online. In order to do this, there was a request from the solicitor's office to go out of order. They have a scheduling conflict, so we'll do that and then go right in order after that. So take up the city solicitor, which would be page 8, and I see there's Lisa. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. So with that, we'll open it up, turn it over to you. Just tell us a little bit about the budget that you have, and then we'll go around and see if counselors have questions for you.
Okay, I think really the only real change to the budget is the fact that we're adding 2 part-time positions, which we've talked about a couple times in ordinance committee. So the mayor has put in 2 part-time positions at $40,000 each. There are some small raises to the line items of the staff that are there. They're pretty minor, really, for the work that these people are doing. And then just expenses, not much different than what we've had in the past, other than it's less. There's nothing in our line item for special counsel. I think all of you were probably in finance last Monday and heard how the mayor is proposing that we pay for outside counsel through free cash this year. So that line item has been zeroed out. Just pretty small amounts. I mean, we've got some amounts to go to a conference in January. Just our normal office supplies and, money to do things like pay for LexisNexis, which we need. And the only thing that I think is not actually on this sheet of solicitor that we have control over is our claims item. And I think the mayor has in that $100,000 to help us pay for claims. That probably won't be enough to get us through the year. It generally is not, but it should get us hopefully pretty far through the year. So that's about it.
Okay. Counselors, questions? Counselor Jordan.
Hey Lisa, how are you tonight?
Good, Kevin, how are you?
Good. I just had one question. Your budget looks fine, but I did want to I had a claims and damage question actually. It relates to, the city is by and large is self-insured. And the question I wanted to ask you is, do you review those type of self-insured claims, or does someone from your office review the self-insured claims? Like say there's property damage or other types of claims, like how are those claims and damage accounts? I see that we have city liability and damage insurance of $627,000. Now, I'm assuming that there's some sort of total on that like we pay the claims out of, or is that, I'm just wondering if your office is reviewing to check the validity of the claims on that type of stuff too, or does the law department have no review of those?
We don't, Councilor Jordan. On the 627, that's not my line item. I think it could be personnel, but I'm not 100% certain. That might be a good question for Tanya, and I don't think she's on here. I think that might be claims like police and fire. That's my guess. I'm not positive of that. I do have control though over the line item that the mayor has proposed, 100,000. So that could be things like pothole claims. It could be, tree claims. We had a lot of those this year. Some slip and fall sidewalk claims. And then it could be bigger things like, workers' comp settlement claims. It could be things that come out of DPW. We often have to pay. So, I never know what we're going to need in a given year. We certainly have needed more than 100,000 this year, but it just depends on the year. So it's kind of a mix of things, but yes, I certainly do review them. just because somebody makes a claim doesn't mean we're going to pay it. We do ask for supporting documentation. Now that we have a paralegal, it's been great because she can look at all of this and ask for additional information, bring it to my attention and say, I don't think we should do anything with this because, there's another avenue for them to get paid, like insurance maybe. So I hope that answers your question.
Kind of, almost. I guess what I'm looking at is who's reviewing things like, so potholes, right? So I knew you did those. So, this is some liability to the city. But what if, say, I don't know, a trash truck backed into a parked car or something, or something like that happened? Like, who would review to make sure that, like, our liability is clear? So before it's just paid, does your office have any oversight on that?
So sometimes, yes. I mean, that could also be, we have auto insurance. So in that particular example, that would probably be something that Ross Insurance would look at and decide whether they're going to pay.
Okay. So for auto insurance, to your knowledge, are we self-insured or we have insurance?
We're paying a premium. I don't know what it is, but we do have auto insurance, yes.
Okay, great. I'll look into that. Thank you so much for your time.
Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. President. Welcome, Lisa. I heard your what you said about claims and damages, but overall, the budget that is before us, is this sufficient to get you through the 12 months of next fiscal year?
For the claims and damages?
No, for your budget for operations.
I think so. Assuming that the 170 that's coming through in free cash for outside counsel, I mean, certainly, we have some lawyers that are on contract, so, I've got bills that I do have to pay, but assuming that does happen and that gets approved by council on the 7th, then I think we should be in good shape. I mean, could we go over? That's always possible, but I think we all try to live within our means, and some of what I requested was cut, but we're going to do our best to try to work within what we have.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone further for legal? And just to let you know, the mayor has joined us. So if there are questions, he is also here again. Councilor Tallman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Lisa, thank you for coming down. On item number 57600, can you explain that in the litigation? You asked for 12,000 and you were given 6,000. Can you explain what that's for and how far that will get you?
Well, one of the things that's for is like if we do arbitrations, we have to pay for arbitrations. We use that also to pay for experts if we need it in a litigation. We actually did have to use it this year for one of our cases to pay an expert. So it's generally for things of that nature, or maybe filing fees if we need them. But normally it's for things like arbitration where we have to pay, we have to pay a certain amount and whoever we're arbitrating with pays a certain amount as well.
Okay. And the other question I had on education and training, I mean, your office must do some training, but it's $200. Is that sufficient for the year?
I'm not sure whether it will be. I mean, obviously you could see we asked for 1,000 and it was cut to 200. It may or may not be. As I mentioned, I know we have a couple different conferences that we're going to try to go to this year. One of them is drivable, so it would just be a hotel. I don't know whether 200 will be enough, but if it's not, then you'll be seeing me back in here asking for some more money.
Okay, thank you. And one last question. On the part-time assistant solicitors, is that something that's going to continue on in future years, or is that just this year?
Well, I'm hoping that it continues on in future years. I mean, this is the first time I think we're doing this in a long time. I think
Right.
A long time ago we had part-time people in the solicitor's office long before I was ever here. I'm hoping that we can find some good people and we, keep them with us from year to year. I guess we'll find out this year, like whether it's worth it. We won't know unless we try. So my answer is I hope so.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone further for legal? Going once, going twice. All right, Lisa, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much, Counselor.
Have a good night.
You too.
All right, next up is the library, and I have that at page 40. Come on in. No, you come sit. Just make sure the mic is on. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you.
I'm just gonna, so page 40, and we'll turn over to you. Any update or comments, and then we'll go around and see who has questions for your side of the budget.
Well, I'm kind of low in this year in the personnel. That's kind of the only line item. Without the BCBs of the library, some programs cannot happen of services. So that's pretty much everything else looks okay. It's just that in the personnel, the reference library assistant.
Okay. All right, any, Counselor McGivern?
Thank you, Mr. President. Maria, on the reference library assistant, it appears you only asked for one. You had two last year.
No, the reference library assistant, we have 3 last year. I asked for 3.
I'm looking at your budget.
Up on the top.
No, it looks, so,
Am I in the wrong line item?
The second one?
51102, it was 3, and now it's 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said it wrong. I'm reading reference librarian, not assistant. There were 2, and now there's only 1.
No, that's also supposed to be 2. I have to.
Yep, 2.
If you remember last year, that's when we had the salary schedule change. And a lot of the requests that I did went into the wrong line item. And by July, August, I had to come here and switch monies around. So what I did this year, I asked for the amount of people that I had, the amount of money needed for those positions. I did not add, I did not delete. I still have the 19 individuals.
And next one down. 2, but there's only money for 1.
Yeah, well, I think that, okay. So the positions are the 20 now.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I see what Joe's saying. Is
Yeah,
positions are
I
the
asked
20s.
for 81,
Yeah.
and I was given 43.
Okay.
I could take that was probably a miscommunication because the year before, it was using the old rate. And I had in that position 2 people. Now I have 3. I had since last year. I had 3 in that position with the new pay rate. So at the 43,000, I probably only have 1.5 and not the 3 people. So I'm not going to have enough in the personnel to complete the amount. I know that I asked for an increase, but even if it was level funded as the year before, the library reference assistant position should be a little more than the 43,000 because I have 3 people there.
Well, right now, according to the mayor's budget, you have a salary for yourself. You have 1 reference library assistant money-wise, 1 reference librarian money-wise.
Am I looking at the wrong one? Because mine says 2. At
And I'm talking about money, not about what the ordinance says 2, but there's only enough money for 1.
Yeah.
So come July 1st, it appears you're going to be down, or if there are vacancies, not able to fill the vacancies.
Well, they're not vacant. I have the people.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, who's going to decide who's going to be laid off? Because I'm not going to make that decision. I have 3 people.
Is the auditor online?
No, I don't see the auditor.
I
The mayor's here today.
don't want to put the mayor on the spot right
Oh, no,
second.
He
no
raised
worries
his
at all.
But-
I made the cut.
Okay, are we cutting people in the library?
Well, so here's what we did. what we did was we averaged the last 3 years plus the 2.5%. That's where we're legally are able to budget so that we can continue to gain state aid. And so what I did was I cut so that the budget reflected the 720, 230. What we cut, what my conversation with Maria was that although cut, that there are other creative ways to be sure that we can be sure that that position's funded so we don't have to lay off. And I think there was a conversation with the chair, was with of the commission there that there might be other creative ways. And so all I did here was encourage the library to look a little deeper and how else we can support the budget while I continue to be as conservative as possible with every department in this fiscal year, as has been my goal. So yeah, there's a position that was cut so that I can honor our commitment so that we can continue state aid and so that we're not dramatically or too much increasing the budget here, while also encouraging the department to be creative with alternative revenue sources to budget gap if that position is really needed, or if any position. I'd be happy to move it around if we have to. So that was the intent.
The problem being, and I think you know this, Mayor Garcia, is come July 1st, if the money's not in the line item, the auditor cannot sign off on the payroll. And then the department head has to lay off those people. And we're self-insured in unemployment, and there's only $50,000 in unemployment, which causes another problem.
I don't think there's an interest to lay off, though, is there, Maria?
Where's the, we have to have that in the budget, that's the purpose of this budget hearing, is to determine if there's enough money to pay for the services that each department is doing. And this budget is saying, according to what Maria just said, the amount of people she has working are not supported by this budget.
So what we can do is, the intent here is to not go over that budget amount, that limit, because we're going to go up 2.5% every year on average for the last 3 years, regardless of the library budget's going to continue to climb. Now, we can continue to trend that way, or we can pump the brakes a little bit while we continue to honor this commitment. I can take it away from energy and expenses, but then it'll have to come back from somewhere later. The library has a healthy budget, a healthy, amount that they collect that can budget gap, whether we take it from here or if we decide to take it from another line item, there is funding at the library that can fund gap the difference.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know, Joe, if you remember back in 97, 98, when Councilor Raymond Fair and you sat down with Tom Schwab, the president of the board, and Phil O'Brien, when we were going to be when the library was going to be put into the books of the city, because before that was not happening. And it was the recommendation from Councilor Fair and Councilor McGivern that the library only ask for personnel, a little bit of books, and a little bit of energy, and that way we didn't have to go into all the procurement and all the other stuff that comes with getting city monies. And the recommendation, I think, has been honored ever since. All I ask is for the personnel to be taken care of, a little bit of the books. 15,000, we're almost 100,000, so the rest does come from the library monies that the mayor is saying that we have, which is true. The 75 that you have here for gas and electric is not near what we pay also a year, so the remainder we pay from our budget. Programs are being paid by the library budget. The programs, insurance, outside contract, maintenance, supply, repairs, you name it, the library covers. All I ask is for the people, a little bit of books, and a little bit with the energy. I don't ask for pencils, pens, paper. Right now, we had over $100 repair to the handicap entrance. That's wear and tear. I didn't come to the city saying I need monies to repair the door. There was an accident that took down one of the poles on the property. That's almost $6,000. I have not come to the city asking I need $6,000 to replace the pole. Some kids, being kids, they broke a window. That's almost $2,000 replacement. You have not seen me come asking for that money. I only ask for the people.
But according to this budget, you're not getting the people.
No, I'm not.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Anyone online? See none. Anyone else in the chamber?
I have a question.
Okay. Councilor Jordan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Maria, always a pleasure to see you.
Same
I
here.
had a question. Are we all set now that every one of your employees is earning at least minimum wage?
Yes, sir. They're happy.
Okay, that's wonderful. And do we have enough in the budget so that when the minimum wage goes up in January, that you'll have enough to pay them at least the $15 an hour when that becomes the new minimum wage?
Yes, sir. The one that the most recent hire, the minimum that she gets paid is $15 an hour.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Okay, so that now just leaves the school department as the only department that doesn't pay its employees at least minimum wage. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate everything you do for us for so many years.
Thank you.
Councilor Rivera has joined us. Anyone further? Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti.
It's more of a clarifying question. The mayor, you mentioned it's staying below or at 720 for the department because of the.
MBLC requirement.
So could you guys tell me just a little, from my own knowledge, about the requirement and what you get if you adhere to that requirement, since I just am not familiar?
If there's a law, a Massachusetts law that requires the municipality to provide the libraries, the public libraries, with the average of the last 3 years plus 2.5% increase. And that should be the budget that we get. If we go below that budget, maybe also Joe can remember back in '89 when our budget was cut, we lost state aid, we lost certification. People from Holyoke could not go to another library in the surrounding areas to get library services, because if this community was not serving and supporting the library that it had, the people from here is not paying taxes in another community, therefore they could not go and do that. So there was a lot of pressure back then. Unfortunately, the pressure was not put into the community, the municipality was put into the board. So what the board did was rehired a couple of us back in '89, and they were paying us with private funds, with the understanding that they were going to be getting still the full benefits of a city employees. And we've been city employees ever since, considered city employees ever since. And then in the '90s, when there was a change in how monies was going to be sent out to the departments, we used to get like a monthly check, and then with that check and the private funds that we had, that's how everything was paid in the library. But then they said, no, if it comes from the city, from a municipality, we have to cut the checks. So that's when Councilor Fair and Joe advised us to maintain just the employees. And then in regards to the other line items that we needed, books are very unique for the library. It's not like I can go shopping anywhere and getting quotes for the books. So we had a specific vendor. And then for gas and electric, there's no competition with gas and electric here, so it was the only one, so that's why those were the items they recommended that we stick with.
Appreciate that.
And
Thank you.
everything else, the library pays for.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor?
I forget, how much do we get in state aid again, Maria? Just, how much do we get in state aid annually?
State aid, it goes up and down. I think the last time, the minimum that we got was in the 50s, the maximum was in the 80s. So it changes every year depending on the state budget. So it could be anywhere between that.
And does the library, do you have like a, I think you do, some like a, I don't know.
We do have a fund
Like a
here
trust or
with the
that
city
collects
that it
interest?
holds the state aid, and that's how we pay for the books, for the gas and electric, and
We
for
have a
many
trust
other
though, right?
vendors. That's the money that we use. Then we use private for the insurance, the maintenance, the repairs, everything else comes. Our budget for the library is over $1 million, and the city is only really taking care of the people. That's all I ask for.
Do you know how much is, what is it, a trust that we have, or
It's an endowment.
an endowment? That, how much that collects in interest every year?
I don't have it in front of me, but if you're asking how much the library has at this moment, I believe it's about 5 or 6 million.
No, but the endowment is like protected
Yes, it
sanctuary,
cannot
but
be used
the
for anything
the
other than
interest
the
that it
library.
collects though.
And then we can't touch the principal, so we get from the endowment, we get $310,000 a year.
Okay.
And then if we see that we need more, then we can ask for more, but the budget is $310,000. And then whatever we have from the state aid, and then donations and grants that we write pays for everything else, but the city is only the people that I ask for.
And so do you spend 100% of the interest of what the endowment the $300-ish?
Like
When
I
you don't
said,
spend it all, does it,
Yes, that and more, because there've been some time that we have to ask for another kind of a payment, because the 310 has not been enough.
okay,
It all depends what's going on during the year. Like, I wasn't expecting a window to be broken, a pole to be taken down, doors to be wear and tear.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting, so those are extra expenses for this year.
so we don't know how much currently is in your disposal in that, that interest collected endowment?
The 310 that we get every year.
So we spend every year we spend 100% of the 310?
Yes.
Or roughly?
And sometimes even more, that we have to ask for another payment.
Okay.
Councilor Rivera?
So, just for clarification, if it were not for the endowment, then,
Excuse me?
if it were not for the endowment, then,
It would be 100% the city responsible, over $1 million budget for the library. Right now, it's a share, kind of a partnership that we have.
is that something that's common throughout different municipalities, or is that just something specific
No,
to Holyoke?
only to libraries that are private corporation that were it was not a department. The municipality did not build a library. The services were already here, so they kind of did an outside contract. Instead of building a new library, a public library, they already had one here. How about if we give you a municipal appropriation every year, and now you provide the services for free? Because there was a charge before people had to pay to be a member of the library. Then for that agreement with the city to be able to provide the service free, and that way they didn't have to create a library. That's how we are in this partnership.
Oh, so that's a different, I never heard that.
Other
I figured
other
since it was the
municipalities,
Holyoke Public
they're 100%.
Library, it was always public, but I guess,
Well, they can be public as long as we're having the support from the
Right,
community.
right,
If
right,
we don't
right.
have the support of the community, then we're not private, we have to be private, and we have to charge. And that's the way it was,
Like the Children's Museum type
yeah.
thing. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilor McGivern?
Back to the 90s, what Maria's talking about is when the state money came in, it was used to pay a lot of it was used to pay the utility bills midway through the year, at the end of the year, and other expenses, not payroll. And the reason was, payroll should have some local control over who's working in the library if they're city employees. There's benefits to go with it. There's the liability of if the state money dried off and there's layoffs, the city would be responsible for paying the unemployment insurance. Not to mention the totality of this whole budget is based on a balanced budget saying we have enough money to pay for X. This is telling me we don't have enough money to pay for X until you look at it's Maria, it's projected at $250,000 this year. The endowment fund and the Friends of the Library are tremendous and wonderful, and we've worked deals with them. The agreement to rebuild the library, saving part of it, and the new addition, almost brand new library, was an agreement with the Friends of the Library and the state and the city, which we worked out, which also included we had to get the commission into being one over X amount of years, because the Friends of the Library making decisions should be appointed by the mayor, not just Friends of the Library, that are doing some wonderful things, but to make decisions, they should be sanctioned as city city commissioners, city directors. And that's why as soon as I saw this payroll, because Maria, your budget always said library schedule next to people, which is the way we got people into this budget, so we knew what we were voting at. I understand, Mayor, where you're coming from. I'm not arguing the money. I'm just arguing the accountability and how this can work, if stuff goes the other way, which it tends to happen over years. But that's the reason for my questions, and I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. With, if the state lives up to their end of the bargain and we earn that $250,000, I agree with the mayor. Maria can balance her budget. It's not the right way to do local business, though. The city should be in control of this budget, not the state and not the Friends of the Library.
Mayor?
Thanks, Councilor McGivern, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. So the personnel line item currently, as it stands in the mayor's version, is $645,230. It's the personnel line item. We're not short in personnel at the library on that front, although there is a person in this position. The mayor's version of the budget was put together before I recognize, or before we realized what the surplus was going to be. Now, I did challenge all departments to come this far and to think harder as much as possible, including the library. We do now have a supplemental or a surplus in our budget, a little breathing room. So there's definitely an opportunity here to offer any supplemental if there isn't any alternative means. Now, if I'm hearing that there's no other alternative means, I'd be happy to revisit and look at this once again. But my message to all departments, including the library, is to be vigilant and be sure that we're looking and being as creative as possible as we go forward with trying to right-size the ship here for the city of Holyoke. That's all.
And I think we have for the past year, even more for 20 years plus, working at $11 an hour. And the people are still there 20, 10 years, 15 years, even at that rate. We're still there. We're committed to the city. We're committed to the library.
Anyone else for the library? Any questions on their side for the budget? Seeing none. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Next is Wistariahurst. I do believe that's page 43. Good evening. How are you? Is the microphone still on? Maybe should light
Oh,
up.
there we go.
Thank you. So we'll turn over to you. Anything to point out or any comments or anything, and then we'll go from there.
I think we tried to keep the budget pretty consistent. We did get a bump up, request a bump up for the city historian. She's been with the city for 14 years, Wistariahurst for 12. She has a master's in library science and does really great work for the city and has for over a decade. So I asked for a bump up for her. And then, of course, minimal bump ups for our part-time workers, and then a double for longevity, because we have another employee who entered the longevity bonus.
Okay. Any questions for Wistariahurst? Councilor McGivern.
Welcome and thank you. Wistariahurst is one of our special jewels that I think is connected to the city because of the family, and certainly something that I hope the city always supports in whatever way. From an operations point of view, there's been a lot of work, and I know CPA funding and good things going on, but from an operations point of view, will this budget get you through the fiscal year?
I think for the most part, yes. I've already spoken with the mayor. There was, I think, a misunderstanding about our insurance line item. Because we're self-insured, I think there was some confusion, but this is actually for our collection itself. It's a special kind of insurance. When people donate things, when they're on loan to us, they do that under the understanding that it will be insured in case there were anything to happen to the building. And also, we hold the city's archives. We would want those to be insured. So that is a concern for that to be at zero at the moment. Other than that, back in, I believe, fiscal year 2021 or 2020, we had a position cut. That was not put back again this year. We'd like to just note that in the future, we really do need that position back, but we understand that, the mayor's working really hard to balance the budget and trying to do everything he can, and so we want to do our part as well. So we'll do what we can to make it work.
And just out of curiosity, I mean, Wistariahurst also has a group of friends, I guess, to label, that do wonderful things for Wistariahurst itself. Currently, what commission is in control of Wistariahurst?
For the board itself, or
what city board is in control of Wistariahurst?
The city is in control of Wistariahurst. We do not have a governing board. We have a friends group that raises funds because we cannot, as city employees, solicit donations.
I understand that, but there still needs to be a city board that oversees Wistariahurst and oversees the operations of the city responsibility. And we've gone through this on a number of occasions, and
well, because the money isn't
the money in this budget is taxpayer dollars.
Exactly.
And
we
the
have
salaries are taxpayer dollars, and I'm not trying to belittle what the Friends do, because what they do is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to accountability and responsibility, whether it's the library or Wistariahurst, we need the city to be in control.
So I guess I'm confused. I mean, the board raises money, I go to the board and I say, this is what we need. So currently, one of the biggest projects we're working on is the repainting. I said, I need $75,000 for the repainting. And they said, okay, we've got it. They voted on it. They've allocated that money to us. The current budget as it stands, most of our funding comes from grants and the city. So they have no control over what we do with city monies. No taxpayer monies are under any control over anyone on the board.
Operation hours, who controls that?
We do.
Who's we?
Whatever our staffing is available. So we work with us, so it's the three of us currently, and then we have some volunteers who come and help us with staffing. We are on site Monday through Friday. Our office hours, we have exhibit hours that are separate where people can come and visit. Archives are by appointment. Our office hours are 8:30 to 4:30, just like the city.
Thank you.
Counselor Murphy Ramboletti?
Okay, so thank you. I was going to ask about insurance, but you did a good job explaining that. What happens when you, I mean, that's a dumb question, what happens when you don't have insurance, but does that just essentially mean you would not have insurance on those items? Okay. And then a clarifying question. I have a couple of questions after Joe, but Councilor McGivern,
Bless you.
is the Friends of Wistariahurst who appoints the board members?
So right now, we have one city appointee from the mayor.
Okay.
And then our staff makes suggestion based on who we think would be a good member.
Yep.
We have the board president will bring it to the table. They'll vote as a board of who can be on the board.
Yep.
We have them supply resumes and do our due diligence to pass that around, and then they decide if that person can or cannot be on the board. But the mayor appointee, there's no vote.
Okay. And so I used to be involved in the Friends of Holyoke Public Schools way back in the day, and essentially our job was to literally just fundraise and then kind of give that money over to the schools. Is
Yep.
that similar?
Yep, they just help supplement projects on site, and then they also exist as a 501c3, so we can apply for specific grants that municipalities don't qualify for.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you very much.
Counselor Jordan?
Hi, good evening. Could I have your name again? I'm sorry.
Megan Seiler?
Okay, Megan, thank you. Again, I took a 4-year hiatus here, so if you came in during that time, I'm still trying to get to know some of the quote-unquote newer people relative to my years of service here. So, Megan, I had a few questions for you. I think maybe there's some confusion regarding us not having a commission that oversees Wistariahurst versus what the Friends Group is doing. The Friends Group is a totally independent, as you well know, 501c3 that's been described here, but you don't have a commission over you like the DPW commission or the fire commission or some of these other departments. You report directly to the mayor, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so nothing has changed in that regard. I wanted to talk to you a couple of things. I didn't initially have the insurance question in my list, but since it's come up, what is the value of all the collections and archives that you're holding? What would be the total appraised value of all of that, so that we can kind of gauge how important $3,400 would be in terms of the insurance premium?
I mean, that's a pretty hard thing to calculate based on items that were donated by the Friends Group back in the early 2000s. They had their items appraised, and those came in at about $300,000. But again, with antiques, things go up and down. Getting an appraisal of our collection would be a Herculean task, and one that would be quite expensive to undertake. But I mean, even modestly, I would say around $1 million with everything that's in there. I mean, that's a very modest appraisal, just based on what I know of what we have in our collection.
So, right, and that's good enough. So conservatively, let's just say it's valued at $1 million. And so you were paying a $3,400 annual premium in the event, God forbid, we had a fire or somebody stole all these things, or they were damaged in some form, or whatever possible events could occur. We were paying $3,400 in premium to insure against a potential $1 million+ loss. Do I have that right?
Correct.
Okay, so that's a big deal. That's something we probably want to fund, it would seem to me, because I don't think we're prepared to pay somebody $1 million plus in the event we have that kind of loss. So I know the mayor's here. Mayor, do you want to weigh in on that potential exposure of $1 million+?
Thank you, Council. I was just waiting until you guys finished. when I originally cut it, I cut it with this assume. I think I was going to look into, because you and I spoke briefly. I was curious whether or not our insurance would cover that, right? So I just felt like we were double insuring, but I'm wrong. So this is definitely something that I should probably add as a supplemental.
Okay. Okay, good. Well,
Yep.
great. That's why we have these conversations.
That's
So good.
it.
Thank
Yeah, thank you.
Good. Appreciate that. Okay, good. No problem. All right, so your budget looks fine to me, Megan. Don't have any issues there. It's pretty Spartan as always, but I did want to talk, one of the bigger things I'm concerned about is deferred maintenance and the capital at the Wistariahurst. You know, one of the things that we need to do is making sure we're taking care of the buildings. And can you talk to me about the need list? Specifically, I know there was something about painting of the building, I believe, at one point that needed to be done, and I think that's in the pipeline. But other capital, I wanted to talk to you about the wall on Pine Street, and when will that be fixed? And what resources do you have earmarked to do that? So those were the first two I wanted to ask you about. Or if you can just overall kind of go through your capital needs at this point. Is there anything pressing that needs funding from a capital perspective?
Currently, we have a loan. We applied for a grant for the from the CPA and got $125,000 for them for the repainting project. And then I asked the board for another $75,000 because we were given rough estimates that would come in around $200,000 for the repainting. We have electrical work currently being done. We just finished another leg of it in the music room, but we're going to be working on shoring up some of the other iffy electrical in the house. We have approximately $55,000 from the Mass Cultural Council capital improvement funds, still in remaining for the next year. We have that. So hopefully going to get all of that work shored up. The next step is going to be foundation and structural work for the chimneys. That's going to come in just based on how many chimneys we have, and we had one estimate given to us for one of the worst chimneys was around $20,000. So we're looking at around $250,000 to $300,000 for that project to shore up the foundation and all of the chimneys. I've already started looking into preservation grants, both with Mass Historical Preservation. There is another organization that does work to preserve historic sites. So I'm doing my best to try and help offset the costs for our city with grants. Those are my big external work. So the repainting project will hopefully be done this year if we can find someone to do that work, because it's a historic property, it's a little bit challenging. And then the next step will be the foundation work. As far as the retaining wall goes, I've been in talks with Alicia Zoller and the mayor about this. This is something we're all really concerned about. I know we have some money from CDBG that's been kind of earmarked for this project. The issue is, without a city engineer currently, it's kind of, I guess, up in the air with that. It's hard to move forward on that project because it will need historic oversight. And even to write something to go out to bid, we need a firm that can help us with an architect and a preservationist for this project, because it is protected under the historic preservation, that the historic marker that we have for the house. So it's going to take a little bit of time to get the wall done and to get it done right. We don't know, I don't think we know how much it's going to cost. Previous estimates from my talking with Bob Parent was around $300,000 for that. So that's sort of what the CDBG fund has been kind of preparing for, and that what we've talked with the mayor about. But those are our major projects that we're kind of working on right now. I think as long as, we can only handle so much at a time, but I think as long as I can keep checking things off the list and applying for grants, we can really shore up this house and have it set for the future, and hopefully, get on a regular schedule. So if there is somebody else who comes in, they can kind of know, okay, this is the year we have to check on the chimneys. And so that's what my role is. I'm trying to really figure out a maintenance schedule that'll work, and so that we can plan financially ahead of time to make sure that these things don't fall derelict again.
Right, exactly. Thank you, Megan. That was good. But I'm just going to run this through one more time. So make sure I have my numbers right. So the painting is about a $200,000 job, of which the CPA is helping you out with about 75,000 of it.
They're doing 125, and then the Wistariahurst Foundation has allocated $75,000.
Okay.
75, yeah.
Okay. And electrical work is 55,000, and you have a grant from that.
Correct. And we've already done with the CPA and with Mass Cultural Council and CDBG funds, we've already done about $150,000 worth of improvements on the electrical.
Interesting. Okay. And the chimneys are 20,000.
That's
and
each.
the wall, each.
That's for each. So a total for the chimney work and the foundation work is going to be around roughly $250,000 to $300,000.
Interesting. And your source of revenue for that is where?
Well, I'm going to be applying for a myriad of grants for that. So both Mass Cultural Council, once we finish with our capitals project fund right now with the electrical, I'll be eligible to apply for another project, which will be that. They do matching grants, so I'll have to apply for other grants as well to match what we need for that. But my goal is to do what I can to offset the cost on the city, however I can with grant writing.
Well, I certainly hope we are, considering we're giving away our CPA money to private organizations. So,
well, they've been very generous.
If we have kind of these needs for our public buildings, I would certainly hope that gets top priority.
Oh, and they've always been very generous with us. I have to say that it's been really wonderful working with them. They've been really great.
I'm sure it is, but of course, some of us have the opinion that until it's all public work is 100% funded, we shouldn't be giving away our tax money to others. But that's just my opinion, perhaps held by some others. But now, with respect to the wall, that's 300 grand. Do we have CDBG money? Do you even you think that's going to be our source of revenue?
Well, I don't really, when I came onto this position last year in August, I was told that they had been working with the CDBG money to allocate it for the retaining wall. And when I talked to Alicia, we had spoken about what we would need to even get started on this project. And it's going to be, I wouldn't know for sure unless Alicia was here to speak on that. But I'm just going off of what I've had with discussions with them. But of course, if we get a firm and it goes out to bid and it comes in higher, then we have to kind of reassess how we're going to approach it.
Could I ask the mayor a question on that, on the wall? Because I just wanted to see, do you have any thoughts yet, Mayor, on the timeline or putting a business plan together to get that wall fixed and where we can identify the money? Because that thing does not look good, and I hope there's a reasonable timeline to get that taken care of. I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Yep. So, and Alicia can go. She's got a plan, and Alicia's awesome. She's knows this inside and out. There has been CDBG funds from the previous, or whatever leftover CDBG funds from the previous rounds, and in her timeline, from everything she has to do, and she can explain much better than what I can, we won't see this happen until I believe it was the fall. Mm-hmm. I did have a conversation with Alicia asking, there has to be some way we can do this a lot sooner. And she's trying. She's tied up with the process and the regulations of the CDBG fund and how that works. And again, she can explain this in greater detail. That makes all the sense in the world. If we wanted to do it sooner, we can fund it ourselves. It's just in the matter of what funding source we want to take that from. But that's the reality of the situation. And what frustrates me is that we allowed it to get to this point to begin with. It's almost like a symbol of what's wrong in Holyoke. But that'll change over time, hopefully.
We'll fix that.
We'll fix that.
Yes, we will.
I really would like, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I really would love to clarify that this project will be complicated. It will be hard to find someone to do this work. So it will take patience to complete this. So even once we've shored up the funding, it will be a tedious, because all of these rocks have to be numbered and labeled and put back in the same exact location. So it's a very time-consuming, tedious process. And because it is a historic site, you know, trust me, no one wants this fixed more than I do. I get calls on it frequently. And I just want to make sure it's done well and right, so we never have to do this again, or at least we'll all be dead if somebody else will have to deal with it. But I just want to just make sure that it's done well, it's done properly, and that it'll be, you know, the money will be well spent and it'll be well cared for years to come, so that it will take a while to do that.
Okay. Could you do us a favor though, Megan, either yourself or Alicia or the mayor? Could you just give the city council periodic updates on this? Because I do get asked questions about it from constituents, and I'd like to give intelligent answers back. And if you could, you know, maybe quarterly at least, keep the council up to date on what progress you're making, what resources you need, if you're running into any obstacles, if we can help. You know, this is an important priority project, and we know you'll do it the right way. We just want to make sure it doesn't get stuck anywhere, because it seems like it's been going on for a while, and we would like to move it forward.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I will be happy
Absolutely.
to update the council.
Okay. Great. Hey, thank you for everything you do, and appreciate supporting your budget otherwise. Best of luck for the next year.
Thank you.
Councilor Givner and Councilor Jenny Rivera have joined us. Turning now over to Councilor McGivern.
Thank you. Just to follow up, and it's probably a little bit out of the budget purview, but I think when it comes to accountability, the control of the budget is important. Megan, obviously, it's her budget, and yes, I understand it's the mayor's budget, which makes the responsibility the mayor. What we had done, contrary to what you heard, is we had, recognized that the Friends, who do a wonderful job and should have a say in projects and things that happen to Wistariahurst, because they raise the money, which we fully understand, but the Friends cannot be responsible for the personnel and the operations of the city itself. So there was a point where a group was merged, similar to what happened with the library, in parts of the Historic Commission, parts of the Friends, and I think Megan, even before her time, pointed out that there's other appointees that are put onto that group that have a say over operations. And certainly, I think the mayor, and any mayor, does a wonderful job, but no mayor is going to have, the time to have a direct say over operations. And I think that's the important part. This budget is a little bit more transparent than the library budget, but what I understand is in the Wistariahurst, the Friends money is in a revolving account. And the revolving account is, well, the auditor just told me that, so this is where
not.
I have problems when we do a budget, and the auditor tells me one thing, and I'm hearing a different thing where the money is, how the money is being spent. Because the city cannot spend money if it's not accepted by the city council and the mayor and recognized in that way to, it can be a source outside of the budget, obviously, but it needs to be recognized and adopted by the city council and the mayor. And that's not happening, Megan, or is that?
The revolving account is not in control of the Friends group. They have a separate bank account with the money that they raise. They have no say over any funds that are kept with the city. None whatsoever.
That's against state law, but I'm done.
You can have the auditor in on that one.
No, I can guarantee you they don't even know what the account is called. They don't know what the amount is. They have no access to any of the city accounts whatsoever. It is completely separate. We have a separate treasurer who has separate accounts. All of their money is separate from the city completely, and they have no control over any of our accounts. They have no say in how we spend that money. They have absolutely no control over it whatsoever. They only have control over the money that they raise. And even then, I have to, if it's something that I need, I can go and ask for it, they can approve it, but they can't spend money on the museum without my approval. And it has to go through procurement law just like any other purchase.
Councilor Tallman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Megan, for coming down and going over your budget. And it does look pretty lean. I think being last in the line here, a lot of my questions are answered already about the insurance, and I think we solved that. And Councilor Jourdain talking about the wall, I know I for months I walk by there from downtown to go to the senior center, and I see that, and I know it's a big issue, and I know there's certain procedures you have to go through, especially being a historic site. So that's something that I'm sure you keep us appraised of. The question I had is that the two employees, enterprise coordinator and the office assistant, so those are two part-time positions?
Correct.
Have they always been part-time?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the position you said you were trying to get back later on? Is that
Program coordinator.
okay? So you've had that before, but that wasn't asked for this year either, was it? Or
Yes, it was asked for this year.
okay, was that, and that's a part-time?
And that's a part-time position as well, correct?
Okay. So those positions, they're not, do they get benefits with those or no?
Yes.
Certain benefits, they only work so many hours, all right?
Any employee that works 20 hours or more gets benefits based on, because they're union positions, they're with NAGE, so they all qualify for benefits.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone further for Wistariahurst? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank
for your
you.
time. Next is Park and Rec, and that's 4142. I see Tisdale on the line. Good evening, how are you?
Hi there.
So we'll turn over to you if there's anything you want to update us on with regards to the budget, and then we'll turn over to questions.
Sure. So the budget for this fiscal year is pretty similar to the previous fiscal year, with just a slight changes in a few expense line items that have been decreased, but it's pretty consistent from the previous year.
Okay, any questions for Park and Rec? Counselor Jordan.
Hey, Maureen, welcome. Did want to just ask you a couple questions. Do you have enough money for the pools, the city pool system this summer? I just want to make sure we have full funding of that.
Yes, this will be the second year the new pool will be open.
Okay, great. And when are you planning on opening the pool, by the way?
So we always tentatively say July 1st, hoping we can open earlier, weather dependent.
Okay. And you're planning on having it open until when, please?
I believe the 19th.
Of August?
Yes, or when the kids go back to school. I know last year they went back earlier. We try and time it when school starts.
Okay. I did want to ask though that if we make sure we have sufficient money so that we can run it through to when the schools restart, and I would request that you get with either the mayor or the city council or combination of both if you need an extra week or two of money.
Okay.
To do that. That's an important program and an important activity for kids, you know, especially if you're in the last 2 weeks of August and there's no school and it's hot as heck. We want to make sure that we have our city pools open. I'll tell you on a side note, I know this is a public meeting, but the water department, where I've been sort of residing for the last 3 years while I had my hiatus from the city council, we took off all of the locks off of all hydrants in the city. And those hydrant locks used to be put on because we had a problem with people opening up the hydrants. But the reason people opened up the hydrants largely is because we didn't have open pools.
Right.
And I want to make sure we live up to our side of that, which is that we have the pools open for the whole summer for the kids. Because if you're hot, you know, and you got no place to cool off, the temptation is there. And that goes for the spray park attendants and otherwise. Those summer programs are super important to our quality of life. And I just want to make sure you have the resources you need to make sure we have full funding of the parks, the spray parks, and the pools. And if you don't, please let us know as soon as possible what you need to do that. because, you know, I'm sure a number of us will champion getting you that money. It's small dollars for these kids, and I want to make sure we've got plenty there. So, in your opinion, do you have what you need for the spray parks and the pools for the whole summer until school opens?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. How are we doing in terms of parks maintenance? Do you have enough so that, you know, between baseball and soccer and mowing the lawns and doing all the stuff, that the amazing work that your department does, do you have enough resources to make sure all that gets done so our parks are ready to go? I also understand, I think the mayor's getting you guys a new piece of equipment that was requested too, to help with that. Can you let us know, you know, do you feel you're in good shape in terms of park maintenance?
Sure, we work closely with the DPW, where the park maintenance is, and we're in communication daily. So any problems that
After she's done, one more and then me.
Hold on.
Mute. Lori, you might want to mute Lori. Yeah. Go ahead, Maureen.
So yeah, we work closely with the maintenance staff in the DPW. I'm talking with them on a daily basis. So if any concerns or problems arise that a resident calls in with, I can just call them and they can take care of it.
Okay. What type of things do you put, Maureen, under contract services for the Parks Department? You have 23,000 requested for that purpose. What would be some examples of that?
Well, for other contracted services, we just have 750.
I'm looking on page 42 to line item.
DPW.
That's DPW.
Oh, that's DPW.
I'm looking at something labeled the Parks Department on page 42.
That's the Parks Division of the DPW.
Yeah. Part of DPW.
I just do the recreation part.
Okay.
Page 40.
Okay. Okay. The reason was at the beginning of the meeting, it said we were going to do 41 and 42. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. That in the event staging goes, I noticed that this was kind of, you know, money was moved out of that. I was looking at some of the transfers last year around. Do we have enough money for any requested events, or is there any events that were denied that, or we're covering the requested events for event staging?
So it looks, for event staging, it's being funded the same as the previous fiscal year.
Yeah, is that enough to cover all the requested events?
So normally, people who are having events come to us, because the parks didn't really have events that involve staging. A lot of it, I think that stemmed from like Celebrate Hoyle.
Okay. And okay, let's see. Senior Fest. I'll stop there. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
All right, the mayor want to follow up on that, or
Go ahead.
all right.
Real quick, Maureen, thank you. I think essentially what you said to Councilor Jordan goes that your budget is sufficient enough to keep you at level service, knowing level service often costs a little bit more each year. My questions are, I believe there's two revolving funds, one being Roberts Field and one being Community Field. Can you just update us on the revolving funds and if they're doing their job in terms of special leasing of those two different fields?
Right. So Community Field is one of the revolving accounts, and that is doing well. And then the other one is Roberts Field.
Yes.
Those two, yeah. So those are doing fine.
Okay. Are we seeing Roberts Field? Is there an interest in leasing and renting it for different functions and events?
Right. So we work with the high school, and they have first priority over the field for sports. And so I work with Mel from the high school, and then we are able to rent it out to other clubs.
Absolutely. High school will always have first priority.
Yeah.
But there's a, summertime and other
Right.
times of the year, it's available. We've had a, semi-pro football team there. We've had concerts there. We've had events that people have come in. It's a unique situation with the stadium's of seating, and the little bit of money we make on special events helps pay off the bond that redid Roberts Field, and I know now there are some maintenance costs coming up for the field itself.
Right.
So if promoting that, and always in conjunction with the high school events first, but promoting it I think would help if we could get some more people interested in renting Roberts Field.
Right.
All set. Thank you, Mr. President.
Counselor Givner?
Hi, thanks, and sorry for being late. I just had one question about the pools. I was just curious why the season is so short, and if that's directly related to funding or personnel.
So basically, we try to base the timeline on when school gets out and when school starts.
Okay, and then is there any has there been any consideration to have it open like for an abbreviated schedule for like evenings and weekends as it gets warmer? For like from school gets out at like 2 or something. So I'm just curious about that.
Right. So working with the maintenance staff from DPW and getting the pool ready, filling out all the proper paperwork. We're already doing that right now. So if the weather cooperates, we would love to open earlier.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Counselor Rivera?
Hey, how you guys doing? My question is going back to the pool too as well. With regards to kind of what Kevin suggested about it being fully funded, or if there's any funding that's needed. Because I remember as being on the board, on the commission before, last year we were charging a fee. I'm wondering if we're going to charge a fee this year, because for me, that was sort of an issue when I was on the board, the fee. I never paid a fee as a kid growing up. And now all of a sudden there was a fee. And then the other piece to me is, what happened to the money with the fee that we made? We made money off of those fees last summer. Like, is that money going back into the pool now, or some of the staffing, the training?
Right.
Because that was one of the issues for me last year with regard to the pool, was kind of charging kids or families. And if we have an opportunity to kind of try to like get away from that, I'm with it 110%. And then the other piece was, you already touched on it, we don't actually control park maintenance. We can suggest the schedule, but there's no guarantee that we're gonna get it done how we want to get it done. Because, and I'm sorry, my daughter right now is acting wild. But there's no guarantee that we're gonna get it done on time. It's more of a recommendation. So if I'm a coach and I call Parks and Recs to say, hey, my fields are not lined, it's just gonna be pretty much a complaint versus an actual action that might happen. Because it's not in the power of actual Parks and Recs, it's in the power of DPW. So DPW is the one that actually controls that, and maybe helping the community have a better understanding of that.
Right.
And maybe we can try to like mitigate some of those issues, but that's a whole different topic. Just kind of wanted to visit the pool thing and the money that we kind of raised last year. I believe it was like 7-8 grand. Not sure now, but just kind of wanted to revisit that.
Right, and I think the unusually warm weather that started earlier this year has just sparked the conversation for next year to just have like the spray parks running by, say, May 1st, so we don't run into the same problem of it's warm, it's 90 degrees in the middle of May, and we're not ready. So we're already looking to avoid that for next year.
Anyone? I still see hands up for Counselor Givner. Counselor Rivera, because you were just done. So, Counselor Givner, you're all set? Counselor Jordan.
Yes, Council Rivera asked a very good question. I want to make sure Council Rivera gets an answer because I'm curious as to the answer. Maureen, are we not going to charge the kids this year for the pools, or is there a plan to charge a fee? Because I agree. When I was a kid, and I know when I worked in the pools, we didn't charge a fee to the kids to come in. What's the plan right now?
So the Park and Rec commissioners voted to continue charging for the pool usage. And I think one of the main reasons why last year there was a lifeguard shortage. I don't know if you remember that, and it's continuing.
Yep.
It's continuing into this year. And so part of the lifeguard shortage in other cities and towns is other cities and towns are not able to open their city pool. So what happens is Holyoke is able to open, you see an influx of people coming from other cities and towns who want to use our pool, which could be a problem because we only have so many people we can have in the pool at the same time for safety reasons. So I think that was one of the reasons that the commissioners wanted to continue having a fee.
Okay, so can we say no fee for Holyoke kids and only fees for out-of-town people?
I can certainly bring that up to them.
Well,
Yeah, absolutely.
how about this? How about if we passed an ordinance that says those are the rules? We might do that because with all due respect to the commission, I'm not a fan of the fees. I would have to say that, you know, we'd probably be more inclined to give you some more money, but if it's going to be a fee on out-of-town folks, that's one thing. Kind of like our friends down at Forest Park do that. Like if you're a Holyoke person and you go down and visit Forest Park, you pay like double or triple the fee of a Springfield resident. So, you know, some of these other towns have gotten cute, so we can be cute too. But our Holyoke people, like, you know, we got poor kids. I mean, like, what were they charging? Like $1 or something to come in, or?
It was, I believe, $5 for a pool pass for the summer.
The season, yeah.
Oh, $5 for a whole summer?
It wasn't, and so the
It was for each kid though. So if a family had 5 kids, 6 kids, it was for each kid.
Yeah, that could be a lot. And, you know, for the little bit of money that we're going to collect out of it, to me, it's probably not worth it. And it sounds like what you're trying to do is really, you're trying to discourage people from out of town to come rolling into the pool. So maybe if we did it that way, we cover what you need to cover.
Right,
you know?
right.
Okay. So if you guys could talk to the commission about that, we would appreciate that. And then maybe myself and Councilor Rivera can file something too on our end of it. To kind of give some guidance. And okay, good. All right. Hey, thank you so much.
Councilor Rivera, you still had your hand up?
Yeah, just one last thing on that. I kind of piggybacking on Kevin with regards to like other communities. Like I understand like in other communities you possibly have a fee or whatnot. But other communities, we're not on the same level with regards to that. You know what I mean? It's not something that we can compare our community to the next. As we've seen when we tried to compare Holyoke to other places, we're totally on a different level when it comes to certain funding mechanisms and our property taxes and business tax. We're obviously unique and eccentric. And to me, that's part of the thing that I kind of like about Holyoke and I love about Holyoke, right? We do things our way and we try to continue that and try to make it happen. So in a sense, like starting to charge kids for the pool, charging kids for, I mean, when you go to Springfield museums, they're free for Springfield residents, and Holyoke, you got to pay. So like, in a sense, like now we're adding on another fee here. Then the other piece is like, where does the money go to? Does it go back into the general operational budget, or is there another revolving fund?
Right. So I can definitely bring this conversation to the commissioners about the no charge for Holyoke residents. Is that the request? Okay.
Yeah, and I remember when I was on the board,
Yeah.
we were talking about like an application where they can get the little cards that they got last year.
Right, the package, yeah.
Let them in, anybody can just come in, but you let the community know. You can go to City Hall or download this application online, turn it in, and you get your pass.
Right.
And as a city resident, you get your little pass that lets you go for the year or whatnot. Just so that you could root out some of this, people coming from other communities and stuff. But that's just wanted.
Anyone further? Mayor?
That's a great idea, coming to City Hall to confirm whether or not folks are, you get a pass. I think there's several different ways we can investigate and govern that for sure. Very interesting conversation. Just going to address the parks. Absolutely, maintenance of the parks. When you meet with the DPW and go over their budget, you'll notice, and as well as in the narrative that I submitted, the Parks Division personnel doubled just so that we can keep up with the adequate maintenance of our parks, and we'll talk more about that when the time comes. The other point mentioned, it was parks, it was the pools, and Maureen, and I like the idea of making sure that we're covered between when we open all the way up until whatever the 2 weeks beyond our original end date. Between that and is the salaries of our lifeguards governed by ordinance as well, or is there flexibility there, counselors? If you could just enlighten me.
There's flexibility. It's not set by ordinance.
All right, so because I just learned the other day, our lifeguards, it's considerably lower than surrounding communities, so I was thinking that maybe perhaps we can match what Springfield pays, and whatever that match is, just to make sure that, and I if it's beyond what I submitted here, I can, if the council wishes to support, I can add this in the supplemental, but making sure that those weeks are in there, and then also making sure that, Maureen, when we look further into this, whatever that difference is, that match and the hours we need, so that we can be competitive and not lose lifeguards to surrounding communities and continue to suffer from lifeguard shortage issues.
Okay.
Councilor McGivern.
Just a couple thoughts. One is I agree with Councilor Jordan and Rivera, and I don't know how the commission even has the authority to charge a fee for anyone. But two, Maureen, and maybe before your time and not before Kevin Jordan's time, the state, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, always had state pools in communities. We had one here in Holyoke, Chicopee, South Hadley, and that offset, I think the communities doing what's right for residents and allowing a more regional approach to providing this much needed service, especially during the warm months of the summer. And I know when the state begged to close Chamorro Pool for the wrong reasons, but understandable reasons, they took over one of the inner city pools, which at one time was I believe the Pouliot pool, and then we made a trade with them because they had so much money invested up by the Fitzgerald hockey rink itself, and it made more sense. But I take it the Commonwealth is reneged on that type of funds for services, and when it comes to pools.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Again, Counselor, what was the question?
All these young people in this room here, Kevin, I just don't get it.
Exactly.
Is the Commonwealth of
I'm an old guy,
Massachusetts
Counselor. I'm an old
paying for, like they used to, paying for the operation cost of pools?
That's new to me. I wouldn't know for sure.
It used to be, not just for Holyoke, I'm talking about across the board. Almost every larger community or every, town had, even South Hadley had a state pool, had access to, and they're considered regional, and I know they have a lot of state parks, but the pools are important when it comes to those balmy, hot summer days, and it's a shame. The state does a lot of good things, but sometimes they just forget, the simple things, how important they are.
Yeah, Mr. President, Councilor McGivern's 100% right. As a matter of fact, we used to have 3 city-run pools. We had Feldman, Ward 2, and we had the Pouliot Pool, which, if people recall, is a replacement to the Jackson Street Pool, which when they put 391 in, they had to demolish our pool. And so the deal with the city was we got a free pool which ultimately was named after, it was called the Ward 6 pool, but then it was renamed after Roland Pouliot, the longtime parks worker. And the state had the Shimura pool.
Yeah.
And their deal with the city was, because everybody was screaming about when they closed the Shimura pool, was, hey, well, we're tapped out, pick up the cost of one of these city pools. Well, in time, we quickly had to close the Ward 2 pool because of capital issues. So we had Feldman down at Pulaski, which I think is the skateboard park or something now,
Yeah.
and we had the Pouliot pool. And they were funding 100% of the Feldman pool. And guess what? When that pool closed and was eliminated, they eliminated their funding. So we now no longer get any funding from the state for the pools. So we went from 4 to 1, and we're the only ones paying for any pools. So.
Councilman Yeager.
And just for the record, there was a Ward 4 pool at one time, and I was on the citywide swim team that won the citywide event for Ward 4. 1968.
There you go.
Councilor Rivera.
We had citywide swim teams.
Yes, we did, Izzy.
I heard there was citywide football teams too. Like, what is this? What did I miss?
You missed a lot.
Yeah, I did. I forgot that Feldman Pool is Lyman Pool. To us, it was Lyman Pool.
Lyman Pool.
And you're saying Feldman. I'm like, what is Feldman Pool?
Big pool in Ward 2.
So I just wanted to comment on the lifeguard piece. Oh my gosh, you're a mess. The lifeguard piece. I'm in agreement with bringing up the salaries for the lifeguards too as well, just to match pretty much. But the situation, I think, kind of where we kind of fell apart or maybe dropped the ball was we used to have a collaboration with the Boys and Girls Club where they used to train our lifeguards, teenagers, right? And I think it still kind of happens, but not at the extent that it used to happen. So yeah, we're losing people because we're having adults that are being trained and they're able to find other jobs, other places where if we could train in some of our younger adults too as well to continue coming back, that would help for us in the long run, right? They would help be able to run a program when they come from college or something like that. But yeah.
All right. Anyone further? Seeing none, hearing none. Thank you, Maureen, for being here tonight. Have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, Maureen.
Thanks, Maureen.
Thank you.
Next up is Council on Aging. I see Neve there. Page 8, I think.
38.
So I'll turn it over to Neve. Any updates or any comments, and then we'll go into the questioning.
It was essentially level funded, and then the original increases for staff were cut, so we're actually coming in under last year's budget. As far as operations, yes, I do think we can function on what's there. I have some small concerns about motor vehicle fuel because that was budgeted before gas prices went through the roof. But I do have money that comes in from the rides themselves that we can cover any gap in terms of fuel costs.
All right. I said 8, it's 38. I'm off. With that, any questions? Councilor McGivern.
Hi, Neve, thank you. Is on the drivers, are we back up and running with the services provided by your drivers?
Yes.
Is there one driver or two?
We have 2 full-time drivers and per diem drivers to cover when they are out on vacation or sick time. What you're seeing there in terms of the difference is we had someone retire it was actually at the very end of fiscal 21. They were making a significantly higher rate than what we hired in when we replaced
Okay.
that person.
And are they per diem? Do you pay as they go?
No, our 2 full-time drivers are 35 hours a week.
Okay, because it looks like according to the budget, they're making about $33,000 a year.
That seems about right to me.
Okay. And with a little bit of help here and there, you think this budget will get you through the fiscal year?
Yes, I do.
How about the cost of fuel and gas? You get that at the DPW pool?
We do, yep.
But you asked for $4,750 and you got $2,500.
I see that, and as I mentioned before, we do have a transportation revolving account, which is where we put the funds that are taken in from what the seniors pay for their rides, and so there is money there to cover that gap if need be.
Thank you.
Anyone further?
Counselor?
Mayor?
Nobody else is on. And I think Neve's great. When I first met with her and go over her budget, I think she was one of a very few that followed the instructions very closely. I just, to add here regarding fuel, we're currently participating with FERCog's regional bid with other Western Massachusetts communities to lock in a firm fixed one rate cost. So I'm waiting to see what that number comes back, and then just averaging out fuel usage in each of the departments and coming up with a much more, coming up closer to the target of what we anticipate to spend for fuel. So the fuel line items are still on the watch, more or less. And these bids are supposed to be coming in early June. So as soon as I can, I know what that is, I can probably be able to revisit these and shore up the fuel line items for each of the departments.
Anyone further? Seeing none, hearing none. Thank you, Neve. Have a good rest of your night. Next up is purchasing. Lori, I see you there. On mute. There you
Okay.
go.
Can you hear me? Thank you.
We'll turn it over to you.
Okay, generally, the budget is pretty good. There is a change in positions and personnel. I came to the council a few months ago and asked for a revisiting of 2 positions in my office, accounts payable specialist and office specialist. The city council did vote to accept the upgrades and the salary upgrades with the position. However, conditions right now in purchasing and procurement with the influx of ARPA funding and ESSER funding, which are both federal, the mayor, myself, and Kelly, we were having conversation as to the direction of the office and what is the best plan. So in lieu of filling the office specialist position, it was agreed upon to support an assistant purchasing, chief procurement officer. I believe in the finance team, my department is the only department that does not have an assistant. If something were to happen to me for some reason, there is no backup for the city. And there's you know, a liability there. This was a conversation I did have with Mayor Morris. This was a conversation I did have with Terry Murphy, and what has percolated the shift to the top to bring up the assistant position is there needs to be, I think, a backup support person, somebody that can just offset the workload that, you know, is coming into the city. The number of 70,000 is a placeholder. I don't know, I know the mayor is looking to retain quality folks coming into the city, and this was a number that was thrown out or discussed to put in as a placeholder. So that is the reason for the change. The office specialist with the upgrade was basically at 45. So that was funded previously with the city council. So we're going from 45 to 70. There still will be only 3 folks in the office. I feel between the great work that our accounts payable specialist is doing now, and with the addition of an assistant, I think a lot of duties can be blended between the 3 individuals. So that's my first discussion and explanation on the salary line items. In terms of the expenses, I'm going to be short on the telephone usage charge. In that bucket, there are 3 items that come out of that line item. Our communication with Crocker Communication, they provide the city our voice over internet telephone service. They held their prices for 4 years since we've converted over. They are on Mass State contract and their rates are going up for the fiscal year. So that is one part of that line item. The other line item is a static charge from Verizon. We have copper landlines, we have fax machines, we have elevators that are in the old school copper lining trunk of Verizon. Those bills fluctuate, in the area of 17.3 and change. Those are static monthly bills that support all of the phone services and old phone dial services through Verizon. In addition, in that bucket is the wireless. Wistariahurst has 2 internet hotspots. That bill has come in, that bill has been paid by purchasing. So as I look at what the line item, what my request was, and what the cut was, I'm gonna be short around $12,000. So that is a concern in terms of, is there enough to support what's coming in? So that's one. My other concern is potentially the advertising. Last year, I mentioned in my notes that we have averaged about 30 to 34 bids that have gone out over the last 3 years. This year, not even July 1, there are 27 bids that either have hit the street or are in process. And so at the rate we're going, that's going to go from 34 bids to 54. And if I look at kind of what our average rate is per ad, potentially could be short about $1,500. The vacation buyback, I had put in the number just as a placeholder per the NAGE contract as well as the PSA contract. I'm a member of the PSA, and that was cut. I think everything else is pretty straight up. We are on a new PO form and printer, so a lot of the repair and maintenance and lease payments have been swept over or brought over to the IT budget, so that's coming off my budget, or the office budget. Parks repair and maintenance, so there's nothing funded for phone equipment, so if somebody needs a phone or whatnot, I'm not sure. I do know there's supply chain issues. The phones are running they run about $80 to $100 depending on the upgrade. So that's it.
Any questions? Counselor McGivern, Counselor Tallman, be next.
Thank you, Ari, and welcome. The Assistant Chief Procurement Officer is newly funded, but not new to the office. What grade rate, what classification will you be using? Is it going to be part of the professional association, or is it going to stand on its own?
Counselor, that's to be determined based on the final job description and where that will fall, if it goes into the PSA or is in the department head schedule.
When do you foresee the filling of the position or the final determination of the salary?
It will be, well, looking to get the line item funded so the actual job description and everything could start right out of the gate for the fiscal year. The need is there. This was kind of a discussion over the last few months with the mayor and with Kelly in terms of the best direction. I think, I can't answer that until I can get out of the gate per se and start looking at the final job description, researching with personnel in terms of an actual, range of salary, and then to see what happens. I do know the need, even though it's a request, I'm going to I can't emphasize enough the need. There needs to be a support person that can offset some of the duties and have a backup. I think that's just good business in general. The need is there. Alicia in community development has offered to help my office with a temporary individual who would strictly be working on the ARPA funding, which is all, government money. We have made contact with an agency. They're trying to source an individual that can come in and just offer some support. Again, if you look at how many bids, active bids that are, have been generated or completed, I'm at, 27, and the year's only half over. A lot of what's happening are very intense bids. There are a lot of RFPs. They're great projects. We need designers. We need police audits. We need to revisit ambulance services. These are all fabulous opportunities. They need the attention of the office, and not just from the beginning but to the end, in terms of working with review committees, scoring appropriately, making appropriate determination, and moving some of these projects forward. I do know the school department with their ESSER funding, they have strict deadlines, and they're just churning out projects and work, and the same thing on the city side. So that's what I can give you at this.
And Lori, I'm not even questioning. You articulated very well earlier this year when you came before us, and this evening as to the needs and your wishes as to realign the department. It makes sense. I just hoping that from a budget point of view, we kind of before July 1, before we vote on this budget, that we know what the salary is going to be for this particular line item. It would help us in our determination. Knowing that ARPA monies can't be used for a lot of things when it comes to city operations, but if ARPA monies are causing a influx in your workload in your department, can we not get administrative dollars out of the ARPA monies to help offset these costs?
Well, good point, Counselor. I can ask that from Alicia. I do know that when we have a construction, city projects group that we meet every other week, and she's had a good pulse on what's happening and has offered to help support a part-time person for temporary help until we can offset with the assistant. So when she comes back in the office next week, I will ask her about the ability to help support and fund a
Thank you.
Contribute to the effort.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Councilor Tallman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, Lori. I guess I got second Councilor McGivern and I are thinking alike. That's exactly the same question I was going to ask about that position, because it's not funded yet, but you do hope to fund it sometime in July or August, that assistant?
My hope is that the council will fund a dollar amount. And again, the dollar amount that's before you was after consultation with the mayor and Kelly Curran, our HR director. You know, it could be a lower number. I think the number in front of you is at the high end. I don't know. I have my thoughts. I do think that at some point when this assistant comes in and he or she gets certified and things, there would be, you know, opportunity for steps to come in. But I will say the market right now, you've got, you know, we're trying to get good people in, have them stay. It's a very complex position. It's very detailed. It's very legalese. A lot of moving parts. So it's gotta be the right fit. And based on other colleagues in the area and their support teams and their salary ranges, I think, you know, it's probably a good number, but potentially might be less as well. I honestly, councilors, I don't know. I feel the number is on the high end.
Okay.
And not to exceed. And so, it certainly would be sensitive to how this position would affect the budget and the benefits and the cost of all of that and the package per se. My hope is and strong desire would be to have the position funded. So then once July 1 comes around and we start the new fiscal year, I can get activated with Kelly to finalize the job description and then fill in the salaries, determine if it's PSA or department head. I believe the PSA, you have to go through steps to have the position in the union. So maybe it's something that, you know, starts as a department head level and then graduates to PSA. But that's to be determined. But I do know that the mayor's been very helpful and Kelly's been very helpful. We've had discussions. We're ready to hit the send button in July.
I appreciate that. And the other question was also already asked, and you already explained it, was about the telephone, because basically your department pays for all the telephone charges throughout the city, right?
Correct.
So how would you fund that if you're going to be short 12,000? Is something later on in the year, or because that's a set cost pretty much, right? What you spend every year on the phones.
Yeah, correct. I have my purchase orders and the fund and the amounts that were paid this last fiscal year. Pretty much the telephone line items outside of the rate increase from Proctor are static charges. So it would be a conversation if, you know, I'm going to have to go to the mayor and the auditor and say, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate it. I'm all set, Mr. President.
Councilor Jordan.
Hey, Lori, always a pleasure to see you. How you doing?
Good, Kevin. How are you?
Good, thank you. I have a few questions for you. It's mostly around the cell phones. Is it still the case that all the cell phones are funded through your office?
No.
No. Okay. Those are done department by department now?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so that's a change. Interesting. Okay. Is each department audits its own cell phones and everything, like the usage, whether they're necessary, or do you go around and review to make sure that all these cell phones we're paying for are even needed?
Yes. So what happens, the departments are responsible for their own mobile devices. We have a program with Verizon that includes first responders. There's about 70 quote unquote phone numbers. And I'll just say some of them are cell phones, some of them are for the Wi-Fi hotspots for the laptops on the first responder vehicles. as well as data service for Arlo cameras. We put some Arlo cameras up on the Geriatric Authority through DPW when there was a lot of break-ins and stuff. So I have access to our online portal that breaks out everything. Generally in January, I start working on my budget, and I cast a net and I look at the data from Verizon, and I send the information to the department heads, and I ask them to review which, who should be deleted, the phone numbers, et cetera. So that happened this year. Some departments with turnover and stuff, there were changes in the right direction. So in terms of an audit per se, I do that in January in preparation for the budget. So I cast that net. I would say at this point, about 75 to 80% of the cell phones and or data usage is with the first responders. Generally, departments and department heads, there's not a lot of phones out and about. So it's a solid program. We have access. I do know we are able to take some cell phones, example, through the elections office, in the clerk's office. They turn them on before an election, and then they're kind of suspended until needed. So my goal was to kind of wrap my arms around that. It's unbelievable. It's complex in detail, but the portals now and the technology allow for myself to go in and just kind of look and to be able to cast that net and make that sweep.
So you check for also really low use or, for example, unusually high use, right? You'll check for those kind of things.
Yeah, the bill comes in and I'll look and I'll say, okay, because I think our first responder rate is $39.99 with data, and then I just kind of look and see, some of our mobile devices are on-call foremen and things. It's just for them to have the phone. There's nothing that has jumped out at me to cause me to, have a conversation. So it is looked at, but each department, sets up their own mobile device. It does have to go through me because I'm like the main contact with Verizon. So I see everything that's coming and going, and I do review.
Good. Well, at least we know, somebody's watching it. That's the key thing. What? Tell me about Crocker. What are we using their service for? And you mentioned that the rates are up, but what does that mean? What is it currently, and what is it projected to go to?
So the rates, they provide our phone service, the 322 numbers. So, and that's all run through the internet. It's called Voice over Internet Protocol. So we transitioned to them. I want to say we had problems since I've been in the city, and then we finally transitioned over, I want to say 2017. So we've been with them for a while. They're on Mass State contracts, so we're compliant. Their rate increase went from $2,600 a month, $2,650 a month to $32.70.15. And so a lot, and this is for City Hall, the Annex, Wistariahurst, DPW, Veterans, Council on Aging.
Wow, 20% increase. That's a pretty big pop.
They held, well, the rate was held for 4 years, and the state, when they go out to bid and they procure vendors to be on their state vendor list, and as part of that procurement, all of the vendors have to submit their price proposals. So since we are making this purchase under Mass State contract, we kind of follow what the pricing and things are with the state contract.
Okay, so, you're well over $47,000, obviously, between the Verizon and the Crocker charge, right? So that kind of lends itself to your earlier point, which is you're going to come up short on this line.
Correct.
And what's our plan on that? We're just going to get a supplemental down the road, or we're not fully funding this? I don't know if the mayor's still there. He wants to weigh in on it, or what the thinking was. I'm assuming, it looks like you requested the whole amount. I can pause there if somebody wants to. I don't know if the mayor wants to tackle that or
Mayor's
not.
here.
Did you, yeah, I want to revisit this and see. Lori, what did we spend exactly last year? Do you have that in front of you? I can't remember. I think I looked at previous year's run rates and.
I have the POs that we put in and my note sheet, and I know it was a lot, and I know I came back a couple times because I was not, my first budget, I did not assume a rate increase until they told me there was a rate increase, but it was, it was submitted, and I know Tanya was on board, or was aware as well, because after I saw the budget sheet, I knew right away I would be short in that line item. So I don't have exactly what we've spent. I have the PO amounts for the 3 buckets. And that kind of, anticipating, 1 month it could be, flat data usage. 1 month it might be a little bit, but in general, it's been pretty stagnant and pretty consistent. And like I said, it's got the Crocker, which is the increase, the Verizon bucket, and then the wireless bucket for Wistariahurst.
So usually we can and I know rates and usages go up and down, but we can average it out throughout the periods of months. And if you haven't noticed, when we meet with departments and placeholders and guesses and things like that, I act conservatively when I see things like that, as a way to, have departments to try to, to figure out some sort of other means to try to understand better what the actual cost is going to be. I can't remember why I came up with the 47,000. I think I just looked at what we spent last year versus the year before, and then just kind of averaged it out in my mind that way, even though that might not be accurate, because like Lori is saying, it's the numbers fluctuate. But I'd be more than happy to sit down with you, Lori, and revisit this, and just to be sure, we're getting close to it, and that we're not just throwing a high estimate number in there without having some sort of measuring method to how we come up with it more, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. And I'm glad you're questioning these things. So that's very much appreciated. I wanted to ask if we know when the next Comcast contract might be up, because one of the things I wanted to ask about, which is relevant to this discussion, is historically Comcast would give a lot of free Wi-Fi, hotspot service, internet service to our municipal buildings as part of our renewals. And I don't know if those provisions were in the current Comcast agreement, but I'm wondering, as I think about, it was mentioned how we have to pay for certain hotspots for Wistariahurst and perhaps some other locations. Are we able to potentially leverage our relationship with Comcast to get some additional free wireless sites for various municipal buildings? Because that could be a really good savings. That was, sort of the senior discount, a few of these different things were certain perks that we got under the Comcast deal. And I don't know if we could revisit that, or if that's up I know it's usually like every 8 to 10 years is that contract. If that might be something we could take a look at.
So the Comcast contract did not go through purchasing. So I believe.
Right, it typically goes through the mayor's office, but.
Yeah, so I'm not aware of the contract when it's up or that piece there.
Okay. But if we could take a look at that agreement, maybe through the mayor's office or whatnot, we could find out when that maybe is up, or if there's any allowance for so many drops. I know one of the things that they did do is they put in the franchise fee, which, by the way, is not really a gift from them. That's a bill that's added to everybody's cable bill, so we're all clear on that. That goes towards the funding of public access TV. I know they give us certain channels to broadcast on television-wise. But it would be interesting to see if we could maybe pick up some of that free internet service for certain municipal buildings that we have a high need for. That could be a potential cost savings to the city. It's something to take a look at.
Yeah, definitely.
I would just make mention, Counselor, that the Verizon wireless is tied into the whole first responder program through the state. So while Comcast can offer Wi-Fi and things of that sort, the Verizon and what I'm speaking to as of the mobile devices, it's a first responder program. What happens is, in the event of maybe a potential catastrophic incident and the cell towers go down, the way the first responder program works is that municipalities and first responders would be able to get some access to Wi-Fi ability to communicate and to do on-the-ground operations. So I think it's a good idea to work Comcast a little bit, but I think the programs themselves for what we have here are a bit different.
Right. I'm not referring to the telephone service. I'm referring to the to the internet service. That's what I'm referring to. So I believe it was mentioned there's certain hotspots, that were set up in certain public buildings. So what I was suggesting is that if we could get free internet with open access Wi-Fi for people that are visiting and I know they have events there at Wistariahurst, for example, we would be able to provide them with free internet service through the Comcast agreement. That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay, thank you.
Changes to no changes to telephone. Okay, great. All right, so thank you for your time as always.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Thank you, Lori. The biggest thing with this budget really and what we want to accomplish moving forward and something for all of us to be vigilant on is just continuity for this department. It's such a critical function of everything that goes on in the city. You're talking about purchases, mitigating procurement loss, process for things between 10 and 50, 50 to 100, 100 plus. It's so tedious and time consuming. If we're not keeping up with it, can put the city behind on a lot of different projects and purchases. And Lori's not only doing procurement, she handles all the purchasing that goes on in the city, bills that need to be paid. And we have currently 2 people in that department. And so what we're looking for here is to really help. This is a gap here. Lori is great. It doesn't surprise me that she's a eagle hawk with the Verizon bills, and she calls things. She raises red flags when they need to be raised, and so forth. We got to continue to strengthen the work there so that we can continue to do what it is we do: mitigate liability, reduce harm, keep up with projects so that all departments are supported. So we want to support Lori as much as we can in that department so that we're maintaining continuity and also achieving some level of sustainability. Knock on wood, God forbid Lori ever decides to retire or up and go, that the next person is trained and ready to take on the work. But two people in that department, one chief, one who's a procurement expert, and the other who's, what's the title of the other one, Lori? Project specialist?
Assistant purchasing.
Like a assistant
Assistant
purchasing?
Chief Procurement Officer.
The assistant purchasing or head, some form of a head clerk or project specialist of some kind.
It was the former office specialist.
So, the department needs help. And I know I'm looking at this when what we presented, and we're presenting this secondary chief procurement officer, but I'm almost feeling as if we should add another person in there, because you're talking about a city, different departments that are constantly purchasing things. Those things need to be vetted and reviewed. Contracts can't be obligated unless they've met procurement law. And so Lori, has to spend time looking through, making sure and confirming, while also manage a series of other things that departments need. And I want us to work together and figure out, not just here, I know this is one strategy, but if we can continue to put our heads together and figure out how to continue to build there so that things don't, so we can avoid any bottlenecking, counselors, that would be very helpful, for sure.
Seeing no other questions, thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Next is police, 1819. Chief, are you there? There he is. Chief, how are you?
I'm good.
So we'll turn over to you. If there's anything you want to talk about before we get into the question portion, we'll turn over to you.
Okay, thank you. Overall, the budget is pretty similar to last year's, and personnel side, we're looking pretty good. We're doing things to improve that, and there's some shortages on the expense side, but I spoke to the mayor, and he talked about the supplemental things, so we'll work with that. Other than that, I'm ready for questions.
Any questions? Councilor Murphy Ramboletti.
Hi, Chief. Thanks for being here. Curious if you could just explain to me the comptroller position. I see you had requested $75,000, and it was not funded. So I'm just curious what that position is, and is it a significant loss?
Okay, so the comptroller position is essentially it's what Sergeant Hart currently does. I pushed for this position because Sergeant Hart is further along in his career, and I definitely believe we're going to need a transition there, and I would prefer that to be a civilian position as opposed to a police officer. This is no knock on Sergeant Hart by any means, because he does unbelievable work for us. But there is going to be a need to get someone in here before he decides to retire and get that person going on the grants. I believe Sergeant Hart currently manages 17 grants, something like that, whatever the number is. And those grants, are, managing them is the tough part. Getting them is one thing, managing them is another. And I think that a comptroller is necessary. I've spoken to the mayor. The mayor has some, other thoughts of a comptroller citywide. I'm all for that as well. I just think that we need one definitely here in the police department. And I feel that it's something that we definitely need to look at. If we don't look at it this year, we definitely need to look at it next year.
Thank you. The other similar question I had was just about the criminal analyst. Is that a position that we haven't had before?
Yeah, that's another big one. Just about every, I think most of you know that you like to call over here for statistics and other things like that. But it's deeper than that. A crime analyst can actually help you solve crimes that, they pull all this stuff together and get you friends and things like that. We're currently part of the Project Safe Neighborhood, which really almost requires a analyst through the U.S. Attorney's Office. I'm trying to work through their analyst, and it would be helpful if we had one for that as well. But it's something I don't like to make the police officers do, pull crime stats rather than be out there trying to solve crime. So
Yeah.
it's another one. I think we definitely, as we progress here, I think if you go around to most city departments, they all have at least one analyst, if not multiple analysts, to do those jobs. So
Okay.
just something we need to keep on the radar and definitely think long and hard about it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anyone with any other questions for the chief? Councilor McGivern, you had your hand up?
Please.
Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, welcome. IT services and licenses, do you foresee an increase in changes that may be in the forecast here?
Yeah, that's definitely something we upped. That was cut as well. That's one of those ones we're definitely going to have to look at. Those are, I believe we have 30-something vendors that we pay for various things. Our licenses for IMC, the speed trailers that we use for traffic control, the tasers, all of these things require some form of data maintenance. So, yeah, that number is something we're definitely gonna have to look at because we have a huge shortage there. I believe what's there right now, we will probably have just enough to pay the ones that are all due in July. And we've been trying to move all of the vendors to a July payment so that it all is just comes in, we get billed and we just pay it for the year. So it's very simple and upfront. Like I say a lot of times on these are all requirements that we have to have. They're not like upgrades or, like some type of, high premium cost thing that we're trying to get better. We're just trying to stick with the basics here. And unfortunately that number is, just a little shy of 200,000.
And the services you use through Wally, are we sufficiently funded for what the police does?
Well, are you talking Wally Computer? I think
Yeah, we're changing from them, I thought.
maybe the mayor might want to address that. There's a change coming.
Yeah, so July 1, there will be a new IT provider. I think, though, those costs, those costs are completely separate than what you see in the police budget, data management.
Well, I was looking on page 10, but in the past, the services that Wally provided were separated for the police department.
Page 10 is, what's page 10? Is that the police budget?
In our budget, yeah, this budget, yeah.
Or is that the IT budget, the citywide?
Computer System Administration, page 10, which should be all IT.
There's a code object is 53020 Police and Fire Network Administration.
Page 10 of the budget?
Yeah, so
I think what we're talking about here is we definitely have our own cost for Wally Computer. It's about 44,000, something like that.
trying to find it here, Counselor.
I think at a previous meeting, I did provide all the council with, the complete list of all the data maintenance things. And I think if that's what you're talking about, it's like for the spam and the Barracuda, I'm looking at a sheet here, the Outlook, those are all costs that we incur here for Wally Computer.
Computers. All right, Police and Fire Network Administration.
Correct.
All right, so we're looking at, with the new guys, with the new company, a total of 155,754 for Police and Fire Network Administration. I do have the full breakdown, though. That's what I'm also trying to pull up here.
I mean, it is up kind of significant.
From
Yeah, we can check it later. We can talk later.
Well, I wasn't prepared to go over the IT budget, but we do have a full breakdown of what we can anticipate going into the new fiscal year with our new IT arrangement. There's some shifts with the new provider and how they offer services, so it might look, it's different. The breakdown is much different than how we break it down in the past, but we're getting a lot more with from what we're already paying in the whole IT budget totality, if that makes sense. I know you're looking at it at just police from how it was organized previously, but with the new providers, there's a method behind how it was all organized, and essentially getting more within what we already are existing paying with our current IT provider, but I wasn't prepared for that conversation.
That's okay. In the past, what's happened is when we switched to Wally, when we switched from the gas and electric, a portion of the vendor's services was kept under the police department for different, arguments were made. And because we're on the police budget, I just wanted to know if the chief was, whether it's Wally or I guess it's going to be a new vendor, is looking for those same services. And I guess I assumed it was in the IT budget because it's not in the police budget.
Yeah, I'm actually asking if Lori can jump right back on because well, let's put a placeholder on that.
Put a placeholder on that.
Right back at you. I'll get.
All right, I can move on with my questions if we can get back to it tonight or in the future. That's fine. It's just more curious and just want to make sure that we're on the same page.
Good questions.
Chief, how many captains do we have?
4, Joe.
Okay. And that's the current ordinance and fully funded, correct?
Correct.
And how many patrol officers are we funded for?
92.
And how many do we have?
Currently 81.
Are we going to get up to 92?
Excuse me, 83. We just hired 2. I forgot the 2 we just hired last week.
Are we going to be able to get up?
The goal is to get there. Yeah, we have another group coming on for the July Academy. That number's in flux right now, but hopefully it's going to be 5 to 6 more there. And then the next academy we're hoping will be in the fall, and we'll try to get up to that 92.
And lieutenants, sergeants?
Yep. What's the question, Lieutenant?
Looks like you're funded for 7 and 15. 15.
8 and 15.
8 and 15.
Correct.
And how many vacancies there?
one.
Thank you, Chief, and appreciate the work that you and the men and women do for the city. Appreciate the answering our questions tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Jordan, then Councilor Tom.
Hey, Chief, how's it going?
Good.
I saw, I'm just going to kind of go through my questions here. I saw that currently you're budgeted for 3.5 captains. And I believe one of your captains is retiring mid-year, so I'm assuming this is why it's 3.5.
Yeah, I'm not really sure on that one. I put in for 4. Obviously, the mayor said Tanya, that was came from the auditor to put it in that way. I'm not sure if that's. I'm assuming it's. To be honest with you, I don't know. I think it's normally it's 4, so I don't know why it's like that. I did make the mayor aware of it. I think he said it was to show the council the pending retirement, but I think it should have been left as 4.
Right, because without supplemental money, it's going to have to go unfunded when she retires.
Right.
Right.
So I don't know, Mayor, are you aware of that? Do you want to address that? Or?
So yeah, the chief always budgets for 4. I think the last few short years, it's been cut, whether it's through previous mayors or the council, and kept funded for 3. Throughout the years, there was some flexibility in the budget through surpluses where we were able to bring on a 4th. I think it was 6 months ago. I did, through conversations with the chief, that say if I can put together a budget that can sustain a 4th, I'm in. Again, we didn't. When this budget was presented, there were new revenues that the budget kept fluctuating, so there were new things we didn't know. So certainly. So the original intent was, all right, well, we got someone that's going to retire presumably in January, and between now and January, there will be a surplus somehow, one way or another, in that line item, so we'd be able to sustain and transition in. But I think, we have a meeting, the chief and I, coming up, I believe this week, if not next week, to talk about and revisit their budget and see what areas we should be supplementing, and that was one I was considering. But there wasn't the idea. We did 3.5, understanding that there's that. We're trying to be creative, but at the same time, there was no hard, firm feeling one way or another. That was another area we had that I'm looking forward to keep my eye on and see what we can do, of whether or not we can just fund it fully. For 4, but also very curious to know how the council feels.
Well, what I guess I'm just driving at is I want to make sure that the budget's adequately funded. If we're doing 3, we're doing 3. If we're doing 4, we're doing 4. Whatever the case may be, but.
Yep. What I wanted to do was to do adequately funded, put together or agree to things that the budget can support. So if we can support a 4th position, I'm all in. But that was the thing. The idea was at the time we were trying to. At one point there was a what do you call it? A deficit that we were trying to close, and then we closed it, and then there was a surplus, and then there was, there was a lot of moving parts. So we're just trying to proceed forward conservatively as much as possible while we continue to see what our limits are, and then making our moves then. And again, knowing that we have $1 million surplus, this is certainly a move we can sustain, no problem.
Okay. With respect to the overtime, and I know there's been a tradition where we've underfunded the overtime on theory that once we have free cash, we would, potentially give some additional money. I'm just kind of curious, though. what's people's thoughts in knowing that it's, you know, it's 250 here out the gate, knowing that it's probably going to end up being, Chief, what are you estimating, 900,000-ish to $1 million, somewhere in that vicinity?
Correct. We're going to come in about 925 this year. And yeah, I think that all went hand in hand with the council order where they wanted, you know, each time. And I think we've sort of ironed out the kinks on that as far as getting back there. I mean, ideally, I'd like to see a little more up front so I don't have to rush back because, you know, July, August is a busy time. And, you know, that 50, I think last time I was back relatively quickly. And, you know, a lot of the times when I come back, I'm not coming back for free cash. I'm coming back to move money from usually the patrolman's line item where we have shortages to offset those officers that we haven't filled yet. And, you know, it's sometimes, you know, it's kind of almost too soon to come back because I don't quite have the money yet. So, you know, it's the same as it was last year right now. So hopefully no less, because then I'll be back real fast. You guys will still be in break, I think. So, we don't, you know, 250 will get me at least into August, where then we can get into a meeting and go from there.
You know, I guess one of the things I also just want to point out is that, you know, we need to be careful when we say things like, you know, we're only X dollars more than last year's budget when we have, you know, a $700,000 underfunded item here, you know, that we're knowingly underfunding, assuming on the premise that we're, you know, we'll get back to you later on it. But I just think we need to just be mindful of how we handle that going forward. In terms of the buybacks, I added those all up. It's about $700,000. Chief, do you think that's right? How many people are you estimating are going to be retiring? And does it look like 700 grand in these buybacks?
Yeah, so that number, as you know, is always, you know, an estimate. Because what we do is we look at the people that are eligible to retire. Right now, we're calculating 6. So that those numbers are, you know, pretty much dead on for those 6 people. If we have an unexpected, you know, retirement, and sometimes not even a retirement, but we've had some younger officers leave, and time is owed to them, people you wouldn't normally count on. Those aren't usually huge numbers, but they still have to be factored in. So, you know, and occasionally we have an officer that is going to retire and then doesn't, which certainly always helps us out. But the numbers we have there are for the 6 that we know are projecting to retire.
Do you know what the total liability is currently for your department in terms of what's sitting out on sort of what I would call the balance sheet of the city? Like if we added up all the vacation buyback, sick leave buyback, time owed buyback of all the members of the department currently, do we have a number that's owed by the city of Hoyoke to those members of the police department?
I don't have that. Maybe Tanya would, but I do not have that.
All right. I'll probably file an order because I think we need to calculate that. I believe I mentioned that to the mayor recently, that I would like to see what that number is sitting at. I would
how much
venture a
we
guess
spend in
it's probably
buybacks?
many millions.
Is that what he's asking?
Total buybacks for everything. It's not totally different from what the 6.
Yeah, I think
he'll follow up with an order.
Tanya has a number. I think she had added it up to a little over $1 million from the last time we spoke. But she has that number, Counselor. She can provide to you.
Yeah,
in total.
but like for example, Mayor, it can't possibly be only $1 million. It's
little over $1 million.
$700,000 for 6 people. There's over 100 and something.
For citywide
people.
buybacks or just police? Are you talking about
Just
citywide?
police.
Oh, okay.
Just police.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally
Yeah.
different from
I'm saying if you added up all the owed money by the city that's unfunded sitting out there.
Oh, I see.
None, none of that is being reserved, right? We're just sort of, it's catch as catch can.
Yep.
But my point is,
I take it back.
it's, yeah, that could be $10 million.
Yep.
Who knows what that number is? Okay. I'd like to see that calculated. I'll file a note. Getting into expenses, how's the police car lease program working? How's that going?
I think it's great, except obviously the delay that we are experiencing, just like anyone else trying to buy a car. But that's not anything to do with the lease itself. Financing of it has been great. We actually have cars that are coming on very shortly here from the last lease. We've sort of upped our game there a little too, and we put some money towards the maintenance of those as well. So the group that's coming in and the next group of cars, 2 years down the road are all going to be under extended warranties. So that should help those other maintenance costs that we incur all the time, at least for the new cars. The old cars obviously will still incur some of that, but it will certainly, things that before, after 36,000 miles, which with a cruiser only is about a year, or less, depending on the cruiser, was out of warranty, where those are going to be extended out much further. So that's going to be a very positive part of this going forward. I think we've got our feet under us. Several years ago, we were really treading water with cruisers, and I think we're really starting to level out and, come around. And it's, I think, in great part to that program.
Do we have a copy that you could share of the contract for the lease of the police cars with the city council? Because I wanted to understand a little better about the, the sort of the model, the financial model. Is it so much per car per month? Like, how's the 205 that you've requested calculated?
So, Tanya and Lori have that.
Okay.
Basically, so I think the term police lease throws people off because they think of like a commercial lease. You lease a car for 3 years and then you give it back. This is more like a purchase, but you're paying only half of it in 1 year and half of it in the next year. And it's municipal leasing, but it's not the same as, Kevin Jourdain going down to Gary Roman leasing a car. That's not what this is. So, but I believe Tanya and Lori have those contracts. They could, I'm sure, could forward them to the council.
Okay, great. Just taking some notes here. Okay. Let's see here. Data management equipment, Chief, what comprises the $108,000 there?
Well, yeah. It's broken down. I do have. So, 108,000. Let's see. Central Square. Central Square is about 33,500. Yeah, I'm sorry. That one of those is IMC. It's broken down. One's 31,000. One's 22,500. I'm just looking on the side here because that 108,000 is only a portion of what we owe. Okay, so those are the ones that are in July. So there's more than that. There's probably another 80,000 to go after that. You have the booking camera for IMC. That's only 300. The remote camera service, 600. The stuff we spoke about, the Barracuda spam, the Barracuda backup, the Sonic Wall, the BM licensing, Outlook, Um,
Okay, so these are a bunch of, like equipment licenses, and this is your
Correct.
and your data plans for those?
correct.
So why is that being budgeted at only 108 and not 188 or whatever the other number that you need?
That was me.
Yeah,
Okay.
I budgeted,
that was
I
me.
budgeted 190, I believe on that one, 195, 690 was the total I had for everything, and the mayor, made some cuts. I'm assuming maybe some of that, I just hearing it tonight, kind of, and maybe some of it, we're not gonna pay it anymore, I don't know.
Yep.
Okay.
So
Mayor, what are your
that
thoughts
number
on
is reflecting the things that's been paid to date, and similar to this, and just like the comment on the overtime there, underfunded line items or whatnot. This is a strategy that the council is no different than the council has practiced in the past. There's money in this budget. And so I've often referred to what the council has done in the past as creative in order to keep a balanced budget here. So these are things that we're going to have to keep our eye on and find areas of which where can be transferred and moved to balance. Certainly we can revisit some of this and be sure that there's a little more flexibility, although it's not 100% like the overtime line item raised and appropriated. There's money in the budget that we're going to see through surpluses. I just did the honor and made the first cut so that the council didn't have to do it. But again, I'm more than happy to revisit these and get more creative and take ideas to be sure that again we're getting as close to our target as possible, while also keeping in mind the pressure that we put on the taxpayers here in the city of Holyoke.
Yeah, that's spot on. I guess my question is, if there's money in this budget to cut, please tell me what it is. I have a big red pen over here. I'll cut it out in 2 seconds. It's just if you, my only question though is the stuff that has to be funded, like if this needs 80 grand, I don't want to pay 80 grand, 6 months from now. I'd rather budget it correctly if like this is all going to be paid. But if there's some fat in this budget, just tell me where it is and I'll make the motion myself. I guess what I'm trying to understand is that where the strategy is that we're like underfunding certain items because we think there's going to be excesses in other ones. What I would rather do is if something has to be funded, let's fund it. And the stuff that can be cut, and it might be a little bloated, let's cut it.
Yep, and a healthy, that's exactly where we want to be, Counselor, where we're able to 100% fund things where we, and when I stepped in, Tanya and I had to submit line item transfers left and right because there were a lot of things that were fixed costs and cut by the council and the former mayor in lieu of surpluses later. It's a crappy strategy, but a strategy that helps balance the budget. But we are at a moment right now, Counselor, to your point, and I do have a meeting with the chief this week. I did email the police chief, the fire chief, among other the departments, just to kind of comb over one more time and make sure that whatever I cut, if a bill is due in July, August, I need to know. If it's due in much later in the fiscal year, great. That gives us some time. Not a way I like to plan, but it's a way to continue to figure things out as you go forward. So I'm with you 100%. If we can not level fund, but fully fund those things where where we know that there's bills coming, it all great if we know that the bill's not coming till the end of the fiscal year and there's some opportunities to see what surpluses might grow in our budget. That's where we'll, later put in those transfer requests in areas where we don't anticipate spending and moving things around, so that that was the intent here at minimum. But do look forward to revisit some of these with the chief and other departments, and just to kind of be sure that we weren't too short-sighted, if that's for the lack of better terms here.
Yeah, and in fairness to you too, I mean, as a new mayor, I mean, I think we should have some tolerance to you offering a new approach and a new way of doing things. So, I'm supportive of that, and if you have a different, as long as it works, I'm open to those kind of new approaches on things, and let's see how it goes. But on the other hand, if you see something here that needs to be cut, you just let me know. As far as drug testing go, I wanted to ask the chief: is all the officers being drug tested once a year at least?
Well, currently, per contract, we do it 4 times a year randomly. It's, when I say random, it's not everyone. It's a random sample of the department that's not chosen by us, and then they go up 4 times a year.
So let's just say, for example, so it's not totally a lottery system. If you get tested one quarter or whatever, does your name come out of the pool, or you could be tested 4 times, but the next person is tested 0 times?
In theory, that's possible. I haven't seen that. I've seen people test twice within the same year, I think is the most I've seen, but it can happen. But it's a random selection each time, and your name goes back in the pool. So you're never, you don't have that opportunity to say, well, I tested last time, I'm good now for a year. It doesn't work that way.
Right. Okay. And we've been having whatever, if we have positives, we have some sort of internal reviews, or how is that handled?
100%. It's all contractual. Basically, what happens, we have not had any positives since we've started this program.
Okay.
I will say that line item is a little underfunded as well, so we're going to need to do something there as well to keep the 4 times.
Absolutely, yeah, that's really important. That was a big deal for us to have that in the agreement, and that was placed there for a reason, right? Because it was a public integrity issue, and some concerns that from a prior incident that was a few years back. So we want to make sure we're doing what we got to do on that. And I know, when we negotiated that, the union, to their credit, did get on board with that. So office and professional supplies, just give me a couple of the bigger ticket ones in there, 26 grand for that. What would be some of the things that you're looking for there?
Right. Okay. So that is interesting this year, and I know we talked about toners for a long time and printers and all that, and we are changing over, bringing in a new company that we're going to supply very shortly here with new toners. New printers and new copiers, and all the toners are part of that price, and that price is roughly about $26,000. So that line item is one that I'm going to need to revisit with the mayor as well, just because obviously there would be nothing left for any of the other office supplies. But with that $26,000, we're getting new printers, all new copiers, and all the toners. We were paying more for that than for all the toners, just the toners alone. So, and there's a maintenance plan with that as well to keep those upgraded. Similar to those like phone, iPhone things, we'll get the newer version when the time comes. So it's sort of setting us up for the future here, not to run into this what I saw as a problem with the toners and everything else. So it's been addressed.
Okay. I have two final questions. I'm going to come back to the specials or slash auxiliaries in a minute, but I did have one final question. It was something that didn't get funded, but I'm just kind of curious as to where your head was at with this. Was the legal defense fund? What was that all about?
Okay. So again, I did fund that. The mayor could speak to it, but that is another contractual thing. The legal defense fund is a portion paid by the city. It's a contractual thing with the unions, and basically, I'm not really sure where I would with that, but that's basically it provides legal counsel for the officers. So to put it in perspective, if there was a lawsuit against the department, the city has an obligation not only to defend the city, but to defend each officer. And this is a way to, help that in the sense that the officer then will be, afforded counsel on his own through the legal defense fund, which is a fund through the Mass Police Association. And so I think it was something negotiated contractually with the unions, and it's for half of the cost of it. Before, officers may choose to do that on their own, and this was something that was contractually negotiated.
Okay. So is this, how did you come up with the 14,000 number?
That's just the half cost for all the officers, for the patrolmen.
Right, but you pay the bills as they come up, like as you would have cases, right? So how would you know that the bill's 28 grand?
No, it's 14,000 to pay. It's like it's almost like putting lawyers on retainer. You're paying that number, and now if they need a lawyer, they call the legal defense fund and they supply the lawyers, as opposed to going through the city. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
That was negotiated with the unions. I think 2 contracts ago.
Okay.
Union.
That specific type of service, or just like what we agreed to was that we would provide lawyers if they had a need?
Well, no, for that, right, for the lawyers, from the legal defense fund, correct.
Okay. All right, interesting. So this is going to have to be, if this is contractually required, then this is potentially something that we have to pay for. And this didn't get funded, so this is going to be a supplemental at some point? Or is this part of your bigger conversation with the mayor?
Is this an automatic, is this a bill that we're getting and or is this if we need it type of situation?
No, this is a bill. This is a bill we have to pay contractually.
So so this year, we've spent $14,000, or we've already expended. When do we get the bill?
I believe. Yeah, as each officer signs up for it, they have to sign up because the bill that's what the city pays, the officer pays the other half. I think it's. I don't want to get misquoted here. It's what is it a person?
What's it like a payroll? Yeah, like a payroll deduction?
Yes, sort of. Yes, it's the MPA, Mass Police Association, and officers had the option to pay for that themselves, to have a lawyer basically on retainer for anything that might come up for them. At some point, it was negotiated with the city to pick up half of that cost for the patrolmen's union. The officers that wanted to join that, and I think the city saw the benefit of doing that because obviously their own legal, department would help supplement what they do.
I don't have the access to Munis at the moment, and would look up what we spent, how much we spent in previous years. Did we spend the whole thing? Because when I visit different department budgets, you know, that was another thing I was trying to avoid, where again we put a number, and we of the 14,000 we only spend 2,000, or you know, it just becomes. But if that's a firm fixed cost that we're gonna get a bill regardless if anybody uses it or not, then yeah, to your point from the previous previous point, Councilor Jardine, there is a similar situation. You know, we're getting a bill, we should budget for it and pay it. But assuming that this is
too, Mayor,
as
is
needed.
that, you know, the officer has to sign up for it. So, you know,
So
if they don't sign up, then that portion that the city allocated contractually then would just go back to the city. And
Right.
I can check that line item. I don't have it right in front of me, but I'm working on that.
Sorry.
There might be you know, for instance, we only have 81 officers, but we could be up to 92, right? So there's an 11 officers didn't sign up for it, so that money would be coming back.
So it's as needed. And this is one of those things where, you know, we want departments to average it out. We know that 100% of the officers are not going to go for this, but on average, X amount of officers use it, and we can come up with a closer dollar figure rather than inflating the budget when we don't have to. This is just, again, one of those other things we're looking into to try to get closer to our target. But yeah, Chief, when we meet, you know, if we can average out of the officers how many typically use it, and at that point we can probably, you know, we can put a number in there. And if it turns out that 100% of the officers, again, there's going to be surpluses in the budget elsewhere, we can move things around, we can hit our target as we get to year end or middle of the fiscal year, if we have to.
Yeah, that's fine.
My last question, Chief, relates to the police reserve / specials line. And I noticed that you had requested 35 people, 180,000. Then it says it's budgeted at 35 people, but only 70,000. Are we actually going to get 35 people for 70,000?
I would say that the way that is now, because of the reform bill, changed things. We were in the process, we went up to 35 when it was reserves. But the police reform bill sort of did away with reserves, but we brought in specials, which are reserve officers under another name. We still have to hire reserves in order to hire full-time. So some of those reserves are going to be on our books but not working until they go to the full-time academy. But then we have specials who are either had the reserve academy prior to the reform bill, which allows them to continue to work, or we have retired officers who are now coming back and working as special officers, so they will work. So those officers are, I think what was done there is we averaged just like 2 shifts per officer times 35 and came up with that number. And then, you know, it cut it to what it cut it to. I'm comfortable with that number for now, and that's something we can definitely revisit. If we hire more and we start using them more, or we need them more, I always am about that, because, you know, I think you know as well that the reserve officers are a definite cost savings overall for us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate everything you do for us. Yep, take care, Chief.
Councilor Tallman.
Thank you, Mr. President, and welcome, Chief. As you know, Councilor Jourdain probably asked most of the questions I was willing to ask here, but I'll go over a couple of things. On the officers, you said you're down to 83, Chief?
That's correct.
Okay, and you did state that you're losing possibly 6 officers, and you may be gaining 6, so it's going to be hard to get up to that 90-something officers within the next year? Because you still have the people to go through the training, right?
Correct, but yeah, that's only the ones I have slated currently for these most recent academies. I know that a lot of people are aware, but police academy is coming to the city of Hoyoke.
Right.
And it's going to be located right here, and I believe that is slated to open in the fall. And my expectation would be that they would have an academy, and that academy is being designed to run multiple academies at the same, rather than just one academy, X amount of people get in and that's it. They're going to run another one, within, a month or so after, like staggered. So we're going to have more opportunities to put people in the academy. And, I think that's certainly going to help in the process to get us up to that number. So my hope is that we'll do that come the fall and anticipate what we're losing as well, and be able to hire those reserves, get them ready, get them vetted, get them trained and ready to go, pass the stuff they need to pass to get in, and then they'll be slated to go as soon as they open those academies.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because as any of us here want to know, and I'm sure the public, the more officers we have on the streets, it's better for the community, And I know you have certain officers have to be inside, but more people and more officers in the patrol cars, keeping our city safe, I think is number one. At court appearance, you asked for $155,000. I know with COVID, we transferred some of that money out, but it went down to $50,000. And do you feel that? I mean, you're going to have more court appearances now with COVID changed. Am I correct?
I believe that, yeah, that number is going to increase. The court has definitely adapted to the times of video, conferencing and all that kind of stuff as well. But for us, no matter how they hold the session, if the officer's going to get called in, it will be a cost. I definitely think that's going to go up. But, the court has been one of the places that has, I think Councilman McGivern knows, it closes when COVID spikes. So
right.
I don't know if we're past those days, but if they do it again, then, our number will stay low. So kind of right now, it reminds me of like kind of the snow toes. You just don't know what kind of storm you're going to get. So if we get a big storm, we use a lot of the snow toe money. If we don't, then we don't. So I'm hopeful that the court will resume, because I'm sure there's a huge backlog there, and we can, hopefully it's not like a blitz coming at us. I think they've tried to wean us all back in and get things going. So I'm hoping that it's not a huge spike all at once, that we can kind of absorb it when it happens.
Appreciate that. And I got a couple more questions. With personnel equipment, it seems like there's a $34,000 cut, and I know equipment is important for police officers. What is some of the items you would need in that line item, and what are you going to have to sacrifice if we don't get the funding for that?
Well, I can tell you what basically I'm looking at is cut there is the best again.
Right.
I think last year we came back when we got the grant, and we anticipated what that number would be. I think the council asked me to do that, and I did it. And so that's basically that money. So I guess we'll just address that the same way we did last year.
Okay, we did get some grant money for that, right, for those vests?
Correct. It's a matching grant, so we just kind of guesstimate how many we're going to need, and then we apply for it when the grant comes, and then obviously the city has to pay half of that. So I tried to factor that in up and above all our other personal equipment, and perhaps it's in a conversation I'll have with the mayor. But I mean, when the grant comes, then I guess we'll address it as we did last year. We'll see where we can get some money to get the vests.
Yeah, and I'm in the opinion, in my opinion anyways, that the captains and lieutenants and the sergeants should be fully funded. If you have the officers, to take care of things, and I know sometimes you're short because of illnesses or injured on duty, that trying to keep that number, the overtime number down, I think, is having those positions filled, especially the captain. I know he's 3.5 because you're counting on the retirement in maybe January, but still you want to be able to have, I think, full complement of your superior officers to try to keep that number down, that overtime number. And if you can expound on that a little bit, is that something that seems to be correct? If you have that superior officers, that you could utilize those, especially being on the street.
Yeah, 100%. Injuries are a part of the job, even for the supervisors. But having a full complement allows you to absorb some of those injuries. And when you don't have a full complement on top of the injuries, you really start to struggle, and you see that overtime number fluctuate. The other part of that full staffing is with the captain that we did promote, we did restructure, and it allowed me to put some more senior leadership off day shift and onto the night shift, which is, for lack of a better way of putting it, it's probably our busiest shift of the 4 to 12. So we now have a captain there, as well as a lieutenant, and on the midnight shift we have 2 lieutenants, as opposed to just a lieutenant on each shift. I think that's important. I think it's important not only for the department, for the public as well, to know that there's senior leadership in the building, like the vast majority of the time.
Okay, I appreciate it, Chief, and thanks for the work you and men and women of the police department do to keep us safe.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Givner.
Hi, thank you, Mr. President, and good evening, Chief Pratt. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for your time. I was just curious about, I had a couple questions. I was curious about the line item longevity. I just don't know what it is, and I was hoping you might help me understand that.
Okay, that's another contractual thing. It's money paid to officers that have been here after a certain amount of years. I think that's, I don't know, I think a lot of the city departments have that, after 10 years, after 20 years, after 25 or 30 years, there's an increase, like a stipend or a bonus for the time you've been here. I think that's the best way I can describe it.
Okay. And I was also wondering, are there any out of the A3 patrol officers, do we have bike police?
We do have bike officers, and then we try to get the bike when the nicer weather comes, with the community policing, with other stuff. Try to get the bikes out there. Obviously, with our shortages, it makes it tough to get them out there, but some of the grants will allow us to do that, and we are going to get some bikes out there. You will see some bikes as the summer months roll in, for sure.
I mean bicycles, not motorcycles, correct?
Oh no, we do have, actually we have both. We do have bicycles, and so we don't have like one bicycle, one guy. We have some bicycles, and we have bicycle officers. I think, that way, we can have more guys trained, and that way it gives us more of a shot to, when we have the ability to put someone out there, we have a better chance of having more bike officers available to put them out. I'm a believer in the bike patrol. I like the bike patrol. I was a bike patrol officer myself. It's awesome. We also have a electric motorcycle that we were able to get on a grant that we will be using as well. I think that will help us in some of the off-road areas, like it's an on-off bike, so it can be used on the street as well as off-road in some of the places where we might have trouble, whether down by the river or up by the reses or places like that.
Mm-hmm. I think it's just also a nice for community to see people at eye level outside and say hello. So I really like the bike patrols, and I was also wondering if I never see any of the officers, just walking through the neighborhoods. And I've lived in some cities where you see that a lot, and I think it really makes a big difference in building community. So I was just curious on your thoughts on that, and if you have any plans for having more guys on the streets or people on the street.
100%. We do the mobile community policing, and part of that is walking beats with the mobile community police vehicle. we can also deploy bikes from that as well. So that's part of it. Again, extra bodies, they're not really a luxury right now, but if we had them, I'm not opposed to that. It's hard for me to not put officers in the cruisers and put them out walking, because we need the cruisers to handle the calls that we do get. So, but I'm with you. I like bikes and walking beats, and you know, there will be some, you will see them through the summer for sure.
Yeah, I just would like to reiterate that I think when you're building community and you know, want people to have better relationships with our police department and understand, you know, the work that you guys do, I think it's just helpful for people to be able to meet and say hello, and, you know, so that everybody knows that our police officers cook with water and they're here to help. You know, it's not always so clear to some. So I appreciate that you're working on that.
Right.
And I was also curious about I was wondering about the insurance question, or the representation, the lawyer representation question.
The legal
Is that
defense
through
fund.
yeah, the legal defense fund, is that through a union as well? Is that what you said?
Correct. It was negotiated with the unions in the city through their contract.
I see. So, because I know medical professionals often have to have their own personal insurance for things like that. So I was curious if our police department has ever considered anything like that, or if it's even possible because of the unions, perhaps it's not even an option.
Well, really, that's what this is. I mean, this is something that the officers could purchase on their own. They came to the agreement. I think the intent was to make it even more attractive for the officers to sign up, because there is a benefit to the city for the officers to have this. So I think, you know, I wasn't in those negotiations, so I'm not 100%, but that's my guess.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate all that you're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Rivera.
How you doing? Thank you, Mr.
Good.
President. Thank you, Chief, for being here. I guess my question was, you said how many officers we have right now? 81?
Actually, it's 83. I misspoke. We just hired 2 that are going to be going to the academy here in the next week or so.
And so we budgeted for 92, right?
Correct.
And how many years have we actually had 92? Or when was the last time we had 92?
I don't know the exact last time we had 92. I think we were just at 92 or close to it, maybe last summer or fall, and then, you know, we had retirements and people left, and we did promotions, and so, you know, that causes the vacancies. I think our challenge is always trying to catch up with civil service. We have, you know, the test and the requirements to get them into the academy. So I think what's coming on board with the academy is going to help with that, with them running staggered academies and multiple academies. And we're not confined to the Holyoke Academy. If there was another academy, say, running at another time in, you know, in a different part of the state, we can send our officers to that academy. So we do that, and we try to get them in. I mean, the sooner we get them in, the sooner we get them out. So we want them to go to the first available academy.
And we're expecting another 6 to retire in FY23?
Correct.
Officers?
I'm not sure the breakdown, but it's, yes, patrol and some, I think, supervisors.
83, if we don't get anybody else new, it'll drop 6 by the end of the next fiscal year. I mean, more than likely, we're gonna get new people. Probably about 5 or 6, you were saying earlier. But
correct, but not, that's, you know, it's a fluctuating number. It's not as quick as 6 in, 6 out, you know what I mean? So,
trying to find an average ground.
Yeah.
More or less, like, I'm okay with trying to fund for the 92, but the idea is if you're averaging about 85 to 87 officers, that's accounting for another 5 officers that are not on the payroll that you're getting the budget for, which is okay, and it gives you room to fluctuate in other areas, kind of where you were cut or you don't have the funding if you don't meet the 92 mark, which kind of feels like you might not, more than likely.
Correct.
Okay. And then the other thing for me, so with the captain, right, the 4th captain, but with 83 officers, like how many captains per officers usually do we have? And like if it's at 92, then the 4 captains, like I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? But if you're averaging about 83 to 84 officers, then the 3.5 for the time being makes sense, right? Until you get to that 92 number, at least for me, right?
I think that you don't really look at captains like this captain gets X amount of officers, this captain gets X amount of officers. They have jobs and they're in charge of, the captains are more in charge of the lieutenants and the sergeants, and the lieutenants and the sergeants are in charge of the patrolmen. So, you know, it's a command and command and control. It's, you know, and it's kind of, I think I hear what you're saying, but what I'm saying is that it's not like you look at a captain. This captain gets 20 cops. This captain gets 20. It's not like that. It breaks down by divisions and what they do, and other captains. You know, for instance, the detective captain, he has X amount of officers under him, but he has lieutenants and sergeants as well. So it's a rank structure. It's a control of broader areas, bureaus, rather than shifts or divisions, I guess, if that makes any sense.
It makes sense to a certain extent, though, to me, right? Like, it makes sense to divide up captains to lead different departments, and it's kind of like you're captains of a football team, and they're kind of managing different pieces on the team, defensive or offensive, and whatever other mechanisms that help the team run together all together. But for me, it's like, population-wise, not population, but like people-wise, right? If you have a lot of chiefs and not enough Indians, then it's like you have more money on the top versus than you would on the bottom. And again, if we need the 4th captain, then it is what it is. If we get the 4th captain, but to me, it's like if we really don't, if at the moment we don't need it. I mean, I hear it's great to have the captain on the 2nd shift. What I would ask is to move the one from the 1st shift to the 2nd shift, because on the 2nd shift is where the real work is happening, obviously, from 12 to that 12 to 4 shift, I think you said, or something?
4 to 12. 4 to 12. 4 to 12.
There you go, my bad. That 4 to 12 shift, because that's obviously where all the hot, like, everything is happening. But that would just be my perspective from a public administration perspective versus a police perspective, I guess. And then I think the legal fees.
So if this helps, what essentially I did with that 4th captain is similar to what you're saying, because the largest portion of people we have here are in the operations bureau, the patrol division. So I basically put 2 captains in there rather than 1.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So in essence, it's what you're talking about. Yeah, I feel strongly that, we do need that 4th captain, and putting that where the vast majority of the people are.
The comptroller thing, I highlighted that too as well. I think it's a great idea, but not that it would be a separate position. I kind of feel like possibly within the hiring someone on the police force, and to do even the analyst stuff, like within there, to be a police officer and an analyst would be awesome, because they can also be a police officer to help you meet that 92 number, unless the analyst is going to be considered a police officer, but not part of it, but a civilian. You get what I'm saying? Like,
so an analyst does a lot of things, sitting behind a computer and pulling numbers and doing that kind of thing. And I think that, you know, to use a police officer to do that is wasting the police officer doing a job that could be done by a civilian person.
But I would
A
assume.
specialist, and they are a specialist. I'm not downgrading what an analyst does. It's important work, and it's complicated, and it's not just a matter of sort of just sitting there and pushing a button and saying these are our crime stats. There's a lot more to it than that as far as analyzing that data. And I think that, you know, can I have a police officer do that? Sure, and to some extent, that's what I do. I use certain police officers to help me with that currently, but I think that is drawing away from their ability to do police work. So for me, for the money that it would cost for an analyst, I think it would be well spent. I forget
agree.
which counselor mentioned putting more cops on the street.
I agree with that piece, but then again, to me, it could be like a two-pronged approach, because if you got someone in graduate school that's graduating or like that's trying to be a cop and is on the same level that's getting their criminal justice or their public administration degree or whatnot, this is the kind of work that they would be doing, and they could be a police officer to help you meet that 92 police officer quota. So it's killing two birds with one stone and kind of being creative about it. Like working with some of the universities, probably Westfield State, they have a great public administration program that has focus on criminal justice in general. So like there's a variety, there's a variety of different places that we could probably reach out to that would even probably help out with interns to get us that criminal.
I think the only issue there is does your crime analyst want to be a police officer? Because
I get
that's not, you know what I mean? It's not the same job. And I think that, you know, if you
if I'm making
to an actual crime analyst
officer over a crime analyst,
they'd have no interest in being a police officer.
I would prefer the police officer title over the crime analyst one, I'll tell you that much. But
well, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and we have people that want to be police officers and not crime analysts, and that's my point. I think they're two very distinct jobs, and that you know, to like you said, you would much rather be a police officer. Well, if I told you were going to be a police officer, but then I stuck you in a closet doing crime analyst, yeah. Well, you know what I mean. Like, if I stuck you in a closet saying now you're going to just do crime analyst work, you thought you were going to be a police officer. You know, that's kind of not what you signed up for. So
Yeah,
how
I
long
get
would
that.
you last in that position? So,
I
but
get
there
that.
are great crime analysts out there that do an incredible job and bring that data much better than we could do it. But you know, it's just a matter of if we want it bad enough here. So I think it's important. I think it's more, you know, it's modernizing the police department a little bit. I think we need it. That's just my opinion. So.
And then the last thing for me is a lot of the grant funding that we receive, right? That a lot of that is not incorporated into this budget, right?
The grant funding.
Yeah, for a lot of the programs that we have assistance with, like so.
No, and you normally can't budget that into your budget. You know, it's part of a lot of the grants to not allow you to do that.
No, okay, no, I
It'd be like
understand.
supplanting.
I'm just saying, like for just another something else to look at too at the same time, but that's fine.
100%.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Chief Pratt. And I just want to make a couple brief comments. One, I am very appreciative of the way that you have rolled out the fourth captain, both in terms of covering more shifts and supporting our officers on patrol, because I see that and have seen it for a while as a big need. And I think when people are a little short is when they actually need more support from administration, especially in a challenging environment that we've been in the past few years. So I commend you in that regard. And I just wanted to touch back on the logistics and some of the rigidities of the budgeting. So my understanding from the past is that you have to budget for the 92 positions because that's how many we have ordained, or that is how many we have determined would be the proper number in the city. And then you do your best to fill them, which I'm all in favor of, for all the reasons that have been discussed, particularly related to overtime and just work stress and a whole other number of reasons. But to the extent that you can't achieve that 92, we know over the years you've come in with transfers to support the other activities and budget items within your budget. But am I correct in the way that I'm describing why you budget for the 92? And then to the extent, and I feel certain that you are doing your best to get to that 92. I don't really have a cynical attitude about that. I just think you're in a tough environment to get people to really be eligible and qualified and want to do the job these days. So I feel that your intentions are definitely there. But having said that, if you do have 4 or 5 open positions within the budget, then it would be reasonable to think that you would transfer that money to, say, the captain line and the overtime line, because you'll need more overtime. So have I got that right?
That's 100% exactly how we do it. And yes, we are always striving to get to the 92, but it's sort of, that's the balance. If we get to 92, then I won't need to transfer as much money. If we don't get to 92, then that's where the money comes from that same line item most of the time to backfill what's cost us over time because of those shortages. So, and I think it's important that we stay at, that shoot for that 92, keep pushing that way, because there's always a time frame where you might be short a little bit. We're in one of those right now. Some of that is caused by recruiting, which has been down all across policing, but I have faith that that'll come back and we'll be able to replenish. And with the academy coming to Hoyoke, with those multiple academies, I feel that's going to definitely help us with that gap. So I'm feeling pretty confident, in the next year or so, that we're going to find ourselves back up higher, at least much closer to that 92, if we're not at 92.
Okay, I just wanted to sort of go over that, particularly for some of the newer counselors, because, sometimes it can be easy to look at the numbers and say, oh, they're just putting in 92 and they're going to just switch the money here and there. But it's just sort of a function of the budgeting process itself. So thank you for that.
Yep, thank you.
Mayor?
Thank you, Counselor, and thank you, Counselor Bacon, for bringing that up. An idea the chief had, and if we can support this, I'm sure this would help him greatly, because, as you know, he's got to get these names through civil service. There's a process, and if he's aiming for 7, you get 2, hopefully. If we offered him a little more flexibility to cast a wider net if we budgeted for 95. He won't necessarily hit the 95, but he can leverage more names off the lists and get closer to 92 if we budgeted for 95. That was something we talked about, and something I had in my list of notes to talk to him when we meet. I think it's this week or next week to go over this, but everything that Councilor Bacon said, that's the idea. You have a number, you try to aim for it as close as you can, reduce the need for overtime. I think we might be able to get a little closer to 92 if we budgeted for 95. It's something to consider.
All right. See no one further. Chief, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Have a good night.
And last is planning. That would be 16, page 16. So with that, turn over to Mr. Vega. How are you, sir? How was dinner?
That was dinner.
It was good. It was a while ago. Good evening, counselors. Good to see you. And so happy to be here. We're obviously very busy in OPED, and the budget pretty much just reflects, just adjustments in salaries in line with what will happen with the contract, with the negotiations. And pretty much everything in the expenses side is, accounted for, pretty standard, no real increases. Couple cuts, couple balances, so happy to take questions. I think the only thing to maybe consider would be the planner one position if we're going to use the impact fee funds, but that's the other order in finance. So, I don't want to recommend any cuts to my budget, but if we're going to shift a little bit of the funding for that position, that would be the one area where you might want to look at, since it will be not coming out of the operating budget, but out of the cannabis impact fee budget.
All right, so Councilor Tallman.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron, for coming down tonight. I just had one quick question on the budget, because it looks like it might be just an error. Education and training, you asked for 1,000 and 2,800 was proposed by the mayor. Is that something that? Yeah.
So
Go
that's
ahead.
actually in line with an education and training program that we're working on with the mayor together to go to. I believe this is the funds for the event in Boston, and then to supplement something that's going along with the mayor's budget, because it's an out-of-state travel one. So I think my understanding is that the out-of-state travel and hotels come out of a mayor's budget, but the fees for the conference itself come out of my budget. So that's
Okay.
to cover, as I've spoken about before, to actually cover what we're planning to go to education instead of trying to move budget around or ask for free cash later.
Okay, so that 2,800 is a real number then.
Yep.
Okay.
Based on two conferences, one in Boston and then one problem properties group that a number of department heads are going to get to go to and share some best practices.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Murphy Ramboletti.
Hi, Aaron. Thank you. Can you just talk about the line item for contracted services? Like,
Sure.
what is that? It looks like it. Do you have? What's that looking like?
We're always going to. That's our key. That's obviously a key, as you know, a key line item for us, particularly in my office. So we will make do with the mayor's number at 12. Of course, we'd love more, but hopefully we'll be able to supplement a lot of the work that we do with grants or with future impact fee funding that'll be in line with that allocations. But contracted services for us goes from everything from things like doors open, things like that we're working on now with the restaurant week, so paying some of that, consultant types. Sometimes it's a matching number we use for some of the grants that come in, so that we don't have to go back to city council for free cash. It kind of gets us that extra help on certain projects when we need it. The nice thing is now that I'm fully staffed, it's sort of often the staff's able to kind of project manage, if you will, and sometimes it's just having someone run point for a short period of time on projects. So, as we get into the new year, I'm hoping that we'll be able to work together on a request, either using ARPA or cannabis funds regarding marketing and tourism, because pretty much anything we've been doing marketing wise for the city for the last year and a half that I've been there has come out of this line item. So, trying to promote what we're doing. So hopefully we'll be able to put something together with a little bit more robust funding, especially as we look next year with the tourism plan, the historic tourism plan, but more importantly, next year's 150th celebration. So we're already sort of taking the lead on that with various community groups, and we'll definitely be needing some funding to get that off and running as we look for other funds, state allocations and grants for that kind of stuff. But the contracted services line really is an important line to my office for sure, and we'll make that 12,000 go a long way.
Great. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor McGivern.
Thanks, Mr. President. Aaron, welcome. Just kind of a general question I've been asked for a number of different department heads is, your budget's pretty straightforward, and we've had the discussion. We'll wrap it up in finance as far as the impact fee in the planner one position. But the operating budget you have at the moment, is this sufficient to get you through the next fiscal year?
The one proposed that we're looking at? I mean, the one.
Yes, the one in front of us, yeah.
The only issue for me looking at this, and I probably will have to come back to you as I did last time, is the cut in the overtime. I think that for a long time, staff has accrued a lot of additional hours, and the clerks union obviously is the only union, the NAGE union, I believe, that gets overtime. Most of my staff is all PSA, so it's all salaried. But as I discussed last year when I came in for a free cash allocation of $5,000 for overtime, all of our meetings are after 5, and so they're sometimes they go a little bit long. Internally, I'm able to sort of work with some of the staff when it comes to like the biped committee meetings and stuff like that. But particularly when you talk about the planning board meetings, and they're usually between 3 and 4 hours at minimum twice a month, it's sort of hard to take that much overtime or that kind of extra hours, if you will, over the 35 hours, into the daily week, because it's just enough work for our head administrative clerk and our clerks to be doing in our office. So that's the only one that was that I'm a little bit concerned about, because again, those are contractual obligations as the clerks are afforded overtime. And again, like I said, our clerk staff, a variety of commissions, Historic Commission, Planning Board, HRA, HEDIC, biped committee, soon to be the Tourism Advisory Committee, HEDIC, so I might be missing one in there, Local Historic District. So that's the only one that's a little bit concerning, but we'll adjust that, I guess, when we get going in the fall.
License board.
License board, thank you.
Planning board, I can cut some of the time there, is just get the planning board to stop talking about what the city council and mayor has got purview over. I didn't say it out loud, did I, Mr. President?
I didn't hear anything.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron.
I think we might, yeah, we could talk about that.
Anyone further in here or online? Mary, you did have your hand raised in the beginning.
Yep, just wanted to make note, as Aaron had alluded to and had discussed with the Finance Committee, and just so everybody here is aware that if Finance Committee and the Council supports supplementing the Planner 2, was it the Planner 2 position?
Planner 1.
Planner 1 position with the marijuana money, then that right there can potentially be cut out of the budget as you see right appropriated. Just to put that highlight there in case anyone is looking for something to cut later on when the marijuana transfer, if it's approved.
Right, so
And
anyone
just
else?
to elaborate, 'cause I know we've talked about it in finance and more people are here, and we worked out a couple of the details the other night. We're not creating a new position. The Planner 2, who we already have staffed, and we're already sort of shifting some of the responsibilities of cannabis over to him. This would be, again, not creating a new position, but allow us then to hire a Planner 1 without increasing any of the proposed budget here. In order to hire our Planner 2, in order to do the GIS mapping and all the sort of planning work. So again, you can think of it, the cannabis even more so, but as licensing, there's a lot of connections with the state. There's a lot of back and forth with the applicants, obviously a lot of internal stuff that we're working on. And so we've been dealing with a lot of the details in the Finance Committee. Happy to meet with any counselors offline or during the week to discuss, some of the more of the impact fee money and the cannabis plan. You will be getting communications from me, hopefully for your next meeting on the application and the process that we're putting forward to allocate funds out of the Cannabis Stabilization and Innovation Fund. But yeah, so that $45,000 could be removed from this budget as city funds if it's replaced with the cannabis impact fee funds. And that's $45,000.
All right, so thank you, Aaron. Have a good night. For us, I did write down some notes. The mayor may have to come back to his choice for supplemental fixes, which is the library, that one position, Wistariahurst, the insurance. Park and Rec would be the lifeguards. Purchasing would be the $12,000 for the telephone. Police, I have 2 notes. One is the 3.5 captain should be 4. And then the $14,000 for the legal fund. So those are some of the notes that I had down for potential. That's your
92
call.
officers, 95 instead of 92.
And then 95. So that'll be the last one, unless I missed something. No. All right. So with that, we'll call this finance budget hearing
Motion
to a close. Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? All opposed?
Aye.
And with that, we did have 10 people in attendance tonight. Very good.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, have a good one,
Thank you.
everyone. And thank you, Mayor, for being here. It's always very helpful.